to reconvene the June 5th, 2017 regular meeting of the Sonoma City Council. Ms. City Clerk, can I get a roll call?
Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Cook.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Agramonte.
Here.
Mayor Hunley.
Here.
Thank you.
I believe our pledge today will be led by Mr. David Wells. If you could come to the podium, all please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we will move on to approval of the agenda. This is when we can rearrange the order of it. Do we go to public comment for this one, this item? No, it's just a council action. Still trying to figure out the correct protocol for adding motions, but pursuant to talking to the city attorney, I will be making a motion after comments from the public. But in the meantime, does someone want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Thank you. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards.
Yes.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
Councilmember Agramonte.
Aye.
Mayor Hunley.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item number 1, comments from the public. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Under state law, matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the council at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for council consideration. Upon being acknowledged, please step to the podium, speak into the microphone. Begin by stating and spelling your name.
Thank you. Ken Brown, BROWN, 1396 Lubeck in the town of Sonoma. I actually have a list today, but I'll get through it quite quickly. I'm currently working to help save an 80-year-old fig tree at Adele Harrison. And the prospectus at tomorrow's school board meeting is that they will remove the tree, put in a plastic field right next to Nathanson Creek. And we're trying to give the school district a timeout to hold off on that disastrous decision. I am still waiting patiently for a discussion on cannabis in the city of Sonoma. We will get through our budget, which cannabis can help, and hopefully we will deal with it soon after that. I'm here yet one more time to talk about affordable housing, just cause evictions. I personally just got a significant rent increase on the house that we lease, so this is an issue that is affecting everyone. And I'll comment on the agenda items when their time comes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Early. I'm here with my wife, Jackie. We live on Castle Road, and we've lived there for 38 years. We're longtime residents of Sonoma, 41 years total, with businesses and a lot of connections and so forth. Sonoma needs a dispensary, and it needs one badly. And I speak for a lot of people that, particularly seniors, that's our main interest. Very much like to present testimonials to the city when the time is right for the countless number of people that cannabis helps in a very serious way. But there's a moratorium in place, as you know. Last February, I started making contact with the city council members and so forth to see if we could get the moratorium addressed. That was 4 months ago. So I was hoping that perhaps, a little nudge might help the project along. Very much want to review, and we feel that cannabis it's a human right. It's not a privilege. Really needs to be addressed by everybody in the state and in the country. In the past 10,000 years, cannabis has been probably the first cultivated agricultural crop that has been history has shown. So it's been around, and it's only been in the past 100 years that the United States has outlawed it. So if you put that in perspective, if it was legal for the past hour and a half, it would have only been illegal for the past minute. So what we have is an impossible game without rules, without any rules, and some people call it TIG war, but it's rules are needed, and we understand that. But a lot of rules that are out there right now at state and county level the rules they're dysfunctional. So out of curiosity, I wonder in this crowd if nobody's too nervous about.
Actually, you just have to address your comments to me. We can't poll the crowd today.
Okay, can't poll the crowd?
No.
All right. Well, then I guess that's it. I would like to see people stand up and tell their story, because it's not just me or us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Henry Mathis in Sonoma, Kelly Glen Lane. We've been living in Sonoma now almost 19 years, and I'm a 13-year cancer survivor. And we have a cancer support group where we help people get through their journey with this dreaded disease. And the main thing that we bear with the patients is pain. And I've watched people suffering with stomach pains and liver ailments, all these caused by the non-prescription painkillers. Almost all the painkillers are NSAIDs, and they play havoc with your stomach. I'm actually glad they do, because when they threw my stomach into a loop and I went and got an MRI, that's when I discovered I had an aneurysm, and otherwise it might have been a kind of deadly surprise for me, but we took care of it. So that's the part that's not prescription. The prescription part is even worse, and we all know what's going on across the country with the opioids and the addiction and all of the other problems and I was about to say a bad word, the things that it does to our systems. So we're sitting here with a no-win. How do we relieve pain? The doctors prescribe the opiates. You run to the drugstore and get your acetaminophen and all the rest of them, and they only barely work. So the continued use of RX drugs basically is going to cause dependency and all sorts of other side effects. So I'm not painting a very pretty picture. I really wish I could. But continued and controlled use of these medicines is horrible. And I've been through this journey with so many patients, and I'm not a doctor. I'm just I got through it, and I wanted to share my deal. But one thing that does work is what they call high CBD, and I am not in that business. I just know they're cannabinoids, which I always mispronounce. There's CBD, which is a painkiller, and it works. And there's just no doubt about that, and I will do cartwheels testimony on that one. There's another one that's called THC that is the one that everybody raises heck about because it's the hallucinogenic one. All I want is for all the patients in our lovely city to be able to get high CBD medicine and get off of the opioids and get off of the non-prescription drugs that are causing so much havoc. We need a dispensary. We need an organized dispensary, and we need a dispensary that is oriented toward medical usage, not recreational. And I would love to see us, as a wonderful city, move in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Daryl Ponison, Ponicisan, Sonoma. The presidential act of breaking a worldwide accord to combat climate change has propelled municipalities and states to redouble their own efforts to protect the planet for future generations. Quote the mayor of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, "We will follow the guidelines of the Paris Agreement for our people, our economy, and our future." Likewise, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Vice President Pence's home state, said, "All climate change is local." Municipalities, no matter their size or influence, remain the first line of defense. Sonoma residents demonstrated their mettle when they voted to ban gas-powered leaf blowers, a courageous act with environmental benefits that can no longer be denied or trivialized. So I propose the city issue a proclamation reaffirming our commitment to do our share to safeguard our common home, and to send that proclamation to Sacramento, to Washington, and to Paris. This is an issue of such magnitude and consequence that it should and must unite us all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlene Hunter, 300 East Napa. I'm talking about the Watmore Bridge. Now, I've brought this up before. I've seen the bridges over at the Development Center. They're painted up. They look good. In the northern part of the state, they're painted up and looking good. We have the only bridge that's rusty. Why can't it have some Rust-Oleum put on it and a coat of paint to make it look better? It's a beautiful, neat old bridge and a nice, quiet country road. Why can't we enhance it? And it's strong, it's sturdy, it's built well, and just give it a coat of Rust-Oleum and some paint. That's all I'm asking. Bye.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Jay, that's J-A-Y, and I live at 783 Garland Avenue in the city of Sonoma. I'm glad I came here today because there are all these good issues now I can speak up on. I'm in on Ken Brown's. I think affordable housing is a really big issue. I'm a nurse practitioner and worked in chronic pain at Kaiser for over a year, and I actually second Henry's ideas. I think that it can have a really great effect, and we don't have a lot of other things available. But that's not why I came. And I'm also into not having the tree removed and put in a plastic lawn. That seems like a really bad idea right next to a creek. And for our kids, I just don't really think that that's the way Sonoma should be going. I'm here because of the First Street West project, and I spoke recently about it, but I wanted to make another point. I wanted to read from the Sonoma Valley Fund Hidden in Plain Sight, that was done in 4/17. It said, the 2008 recession that drove a collapse in the housing market encouraged investors to acquire newly affordable properties and turn them into vacation rentals and second homes, particularly in the springs. One indication of this phenomena is that by 2014, about 46% of all vacant housing in the valley was considered seasonal, being used for occasional occupancy or as second homes. So, of course, I think that that requirement that we have for housing, for big developments like the one at First Street West should be enforced. I don't really quite understand why it even got to this point that we're having to discuss it here. Why it wasn't, those regulations weren't kind of, enforced before we all had to discuss it. And I want to ask two questions. So what percentage of actual residents in a community do we think really is necessary in order to have a good community? At some point, you have to balance between seasonal, and tourism and the actual people that live there. And at some point, there's going to be a decrease in quality of life. And that might not be something that's easy to quantify by dollars and cents, but it is something that occurs and we all need to consider. That's it.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Chris Petlock, 426 Napa Road, Sonoma. So back in February, I raised some issues regarding city water rates, and I just some things came to me over the weekend, and I just wanted to bring it up. On Sunday, I was sitting at one of my favorite watering holes when a couple sat down next to me and joined in our conversation. We eventually introduced each other, and I let him know I was the director of finance for the Valley Inland Water District, his water district. He wanted to talk to me about his experience with some billing and payment issues he had. So I listened to him and assured him I'd take care of his problems, gave him a card, and we just kind of chatted for a little while longer. Then his wife turned to me and said, "You wouldn't turn my water off, would you? That's illegal, right?" And I could see her putting it together in her mind. Well, how am I going to shower? How am I going to put water for my kids? How am I going to flush the toilet? And so as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about my own experiences in life and other people's experiences, and I was thinking that's why the California Constitution has in it that municipalities can only collect the cost of service, so that there's no undue or unfair taxes on on people that live in those municipalities. So I just kind of thought this through for a little bit. Just think about a family here in our little city. They're struggling to maybe make ends meet, pay the bills. Things are tight, and maybe they get behind. They get a late payment fee. Then maybe they get a turn-off fee. Then they get turned off. So now what do? They got to turn on their water. Things were tight before. What are they gonna choose to do? Give up the phone? Give up a meal? They got to have water. Again, I've pointed out that the rates here in the city are based on an illegal rate scheme, based on conservation. I've pointed out to this council that in the financial statements, the audited financial statements, you'll see general fund support transfers, franchise fee transfers, payment in lieu of property tax, and there's misrepresentations in the financial statements saying that those transfers were for water projects. But there are no water projects outside the water fund, so where was that money gone to? If it wasn't for those transfers, rates would be much lower. People are up against it in this town. You're hearing it here about rents. This is another issue. It's all incremental. It's all connected. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Howdy. I'm David Berglund, B-E-R-G-L-U-N-D. I'm supporting medical cannabis for my wife, who usually doesn't drop off until at least 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning. She's tried prescriptions after prescription for sleep, which has done her no good, and she has been using some medical cannabis, which has helped her tremendously to drop off. In fact, her snoring gets quite loud. So I'll keep it very shortly here and just offer my support to it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Cynthia Scarborough, Vintage House Senior Center, and I would like to make note that June is recognized as LGBT Awareness Month or Gay Pride Month. Here at Vintage House, we hold a support group every third Friday of the month from 10 until noon for LGBT seniors to come together and share experiences, particularly just to support each other, but particularly to deal with some of the issues that come up in a community, not just ours, but in many communities. As people get older and are needing medical help, it's often challenging to say, this is my partner, and have an adverse reaction from healthcare providers. So we're just drawing attention to the fact that it is Gay Pride Month, and when I get up again in a minute, I will distribute through the mayor some Gay Pride ribbons if any of you would like to join me in wearing them. And I would also like to recognize that later this month on Friday, June the 23rd, from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. We are hosting an LGBT programs expansion celebration at Vintage House, inviting LGBT seniors to join us in identifying what kinds of additional resources and programs they would like to see. We have a film series coming up later this year, and we're just open to creating new programs for a very specific targeted population, and want to make that available. And then also to note that our staff and a few members of our board and key volunteers have recently completed an LGBT cultural competency awareness training to increase our ability to be more sensitive to issues, things like avoiding automatic he and she pronouns. And a whole slew of things that I won't bother to go into now. But just want to raise again the issue that LGBT seniors are facing different issues growing older than the population at large, and we want to make life better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael Coates, 2800 Burndale, Madam Mayor, council members. On the cannabis thing real quick, as you explore this, it's not really the golden goose that we were all kind of thinking that it might be. You hear about all this money in Colorado and all of this. After the state and the county, and presumably the city, bless you, start taking their whack on this, we need to be careful a little bit, because the feds are going to come in behind this eventually, and it's going to force people back underground if we get a little too zealous on the taxation of this. So I just want to throw that out. Secondly, a bit of promotion. On July 21st, Barbara Boxer's coming to town. She's going to come accept a Salmon Champion Award from the Golden Gate Salmon Association at Ramekins that evening. And hope you're there. One of the reasons that we're honoring her, which I think was just a huge act of political courage on her part, was her voting against her water bill on her way out the door. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Sheila O'Neill, Blue Wing Drive, Protect Sonoma. I just want to shine a light and continue to shine the light on some alternative facts that we have going on around town related to the First Street East project, and make sure that people are aware of these alternative facts. They're coming in the form of educational series distributed via online, social media posts, and presentations to the City Council and to the Planning Commission. The communications director, Heidi Darling, I first met when she came to a Protect Sonoma meeting and pretended to be a concerned citizen who had family in Sonoma, and they were irate about this project. She didn't want us to know that she really worked for the developer, but we figured that out pretty quick, called her on it, and asked for transparency. On April 17th, Heidi addressed this City Council, and she gave an address of 33 Balsam. That address doesn't exist, so I called her on it. And she said, oh, whoops, it's 17619 Balsam. That address does exist, but the people who live there have never heard of her. She lives in San Anselmo. Why she keeps trying to pretend she lives in Sonoma, I don't know. I like transparency. I don't like alternative facts. Last week on Facebook, FSC Project was posting some erroneous information about their project, and I commented on it saying it was 30 hotel rooms, 32 houses, restaurant, pool club, spa. FSC Project said, stop spreading erroneous information. It's 20 hotel rooms. I checked with David Goodison. Guess what? I was right. It's 30 hotel rooms. I went to put that comment up, but guess what? All the comments were deleted. So they're accusing me of sharing erroneous information. I am not. I'm very good at getting my facts, and I will continue to do so. The FSC developers are touting smart growth and smart Sonoma as their slogan. They want us to be all educated, and if we don't agree with them, they're going to educate us so that we do agree with them. But the fact is, there's nothing smart about this project. There's nothing smart about locating a large hotel, a restaurant, parking garage, and dense housing across the street from our Little League field and next to the Vintage House on the bike path. The FSC team stated on Facebook that they were donating 6 affordable housing units to the city of Sonoma. I don't think so. There's no donation going on there. They are meeting the requirements for affordable housing. And there's no prices set yet, so we don't even know what that affordable really means. They keep talking about sustainable tourism. and that they're going to reduce carbon emissions, reduce air pollution, fight America's obesity, diabetes epidemic, improve public safety, and reduce Alzheimer rates. Oh my God, they found the Holy Grail. I wish it was true. I know it's not. They've also said that Sonoma should model our city after Windsor. Well, the fact is, I think General Vallejo did a pretty good job lining up Sonoma, and it's a very walkable city already. We are meeting Wednesday evening with some of the
I'm gonna give you
representatives
about
of First
10 more
Street East.
seconds.
Okay, we're meeting Wednesday evening with some of the representatives. We've made it clear we do not want to be recorded. They made it clear that they always record. If any of you have met with them, please know that recording illegally means that you didn't get permission from all participants. If they recorded you without your consent, that is illegal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. At this time, I have a motion that I would like to make. Given the events from the past few days since we published our agenda, that's why I'm bringing it now. There's been a lot of discussion about climate change after the president stated he was going to be withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement. Mr. Tapanasan brought it up tonight. And I've gotten a lot of messages from people who have pointed out that there are mayors and governors across the country who have been expressing support for the goals of this agreement. And as you know, we adopted last year several initiatives with Sonoma County Climate Action 2020 to reduce greenhouse gases, and we'll be working on all of that. So in light of all of that, I want to bring a motion to my council for three things. First is for a resolution acknowledging that we are part of a global effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and restating our commitment as a city to reduce greenhouse gas emissions under Climate Action 2020, which has a more aggressive reduction goal than the Paris Climate Agreement. Second is to authorize me to join the Mayor's National Climate Action Agenda, which is a network of over 100 cities and mayors who have committed to implementing and sharing climate action plans, and we already have a climate action plan. They've also compiled a list of over 200 mayors who have pledged support of the Paris Climate Agreement. And third, I'd like to send a letter of support to Governor Jerry Brown, who has become the de facto national leader on environmental issues, particularly addressing climate change and the necessary reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm happy to help staff with the drafting of these documents. I've heard from members of the community and people who work in these fields who have also offered their services, because I know that we have a lot of things happening in the next 2 weeks. And any notes?
So, Madam Mayor, for clarity for members of the public, you are asking that these items be added to the June 19th agenda?
Yes.
Not asking council to take action of this item?
Correct.
And because typically the council does have a policy, in order to add items to the agenda, it's a two-step process. However, based on the time sensitivity of this issue, you're asking council, under the Brown Act, you can add things to a future agenda in a meeting as you are doing now. So you basically are asking the pleasure of the rest of your colleagues if they would like to add your three items to the agenda for June 19th.
For
That would-
discussion.
For discussion. And just for council perspective on this issue, if you are interested or not interested, if you can keep your remarks fairly brief, because again, this is not an agendized issue for this evening. You can decide if you want to agendize it for the 19th, but please keep your comments to a minimum.
And so do we still go questions, comments, us?
You should first do council comments and questions that they have of you. First, questions, anything that they have of you, and then go to public comment, and then come back for a council decision whether to agendize.
Okay, any questions?
It's
Councilmember
a
Harrington.
comment, it's not a question. Oh, just, if we do decide to agendize it, then I would want to agendize, discussing what actions the city of Sonoma can take with regard to climate action, including, but not limited to, the three that Mayor Hunley outlined, so that if the additional ideas or topics came up before that time, they could also be discussed.
That is a good point. I did want to give it a little more broad so that people in the next 2 weeks have ideas, or if something on here didn't work out, it was a little bit flexible. Seeing no more questions, I will take it out to the public for public comment.
Ken Brown, I'm the chair of the Community Services and Environmental Commission. I fully support the mayor's seeking this before the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
I'll just say I fully support it as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm all the way back there. I fully support this. Rachel Hunley, thank you. My name is Lily.
Oh,
Lily
name and
Horine.
address.
What?
Name and address, please.
Lily Horine, 578 Estamadera Drive.
Thank you.
I'm Matt Metzler. I'm a member of this Community Services Environmental Commission. I want to commend the mayor for bringing this before the council. And there's a lot of specific actions that we're doing on they're on tonight's agenda, and that we're doing in the Community Services Environmental Commission to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of activities in the committee. So I want to, again, just want to say we support what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the council for a vote. Do I need to restate my motion? Was it clear what my motion was?
So if you want, I think it would be good to restate it one more time.
I would like to make a motion to agendize at our next meeting a discussion of a resolution acknowledging that we are part of a global effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Second, to authorizing me to join the Mayor's National Climate Action Agenda. And number 3, sending a letter of support to Governor Jerry Brown. And 4, I guess, would be anything on par and related to this subject.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion, we have a second. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Agramonte?
Aye.
Mayor Henley?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Going back to our regularly scheduled program, do we have any meeting dedications tonight? Seeing none. Item 3.1 is a proclamation for the month of June as Elder Abuse Awareness Month. Cynthia Scarborough, if you could please meet me at the podium. Elder Abuse Awareness Month, June 2017. Whereas nearly 1 in 3 residents of Sonoma are aged 60 and better, and whereas seniors have the right to be protected from all types of abuse, including financial, physical, psychological, sexual, and neglect, and whereas abuse of older people is an ever-increasing problem in today's society, crossing all socioeconomic boundaries. And whereas responding to elder abuse helps improve the quality of life for Sonoma seniors, enabling them to continue contributing as leaders, mentors, volunteers, and valued members of our community. And whereas elder abuse prevention requires continual community awareness and education, and elder abuse should neither be ignored nor endured. And whereas the City of Sonoma provides support, services, and education to seniors through Vintage House Senior Center. And whereas Vintage House provides support and referrals to adult protective services and long-term care ombudsman oh God, to investigate elder abuse, and provides education to seniors and the community at large about elder abuse awareness. Now therefore I, Rachel Hundley, Mayor of the City of Sonoma, do hereby proclaim June 2017 as Elder Abuse Awareness Month, and encourage all Sonoma citizens to become aware of the signs of abuse and neglect, and to discuss potential abuse in the community with Vintage House or adult protective services, and potential abuse in long-term care facilities with the Ombudsman Program. I present this to you, and would you like to say a few words?
I would. If you would pass these on to your colleagues.
Let you have that mic.
Thank you, Rachel. Last year, in 2016, there were 378 reports of abuse made. That's down from 411 the year before. And it's always a mixed blessing when the incidence of reports go up and when they come down. Experts have estimated that only 1 in every 23 incidences of actual abuse even get reported. So we don't really know what 378 means, other than the fact that 66 of those reports were to the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program to investigate abuse purported to be occurring in licensed facilities. And the remaining 312 were reports to Adult Protective Services covering potential abuse in the community, people living independently in the community. What we want to do, of course, all of us want to see the incidence of actual abuse on the downturn. But as long as it's happening, and the evidence is that it is increasing as people are living longer, with increasing challenges, people are outliving their ability to make wise decisions in some cases, and financial abuse in particular is on the upswing. What we want to do is make sure that our community is educated about what to look for. And there's a new figure that's coming out at the county level. It's Nosy Harry, our good neighbor who's always watching what's going on. And we want the Harrys of the world to notice if somebody looks like they're not caring for themselves. Even self-neglect is a form of abuse. Or if they notice that someone's younger nephew is coming by frequently, and the day after he comes by, the older neighbor is kind of fearful. There's so many things to be on the lookout for. What we're not seeking to do is have people become fearful and reporting everything that's amiss, but to learn what the signs of abuse are. And toward that end, we would invite the community to come next Wednesday from 10 to noon to hear Matt Stapleton from the District Attorney's Office talk about frauds and scams and how to protect yourself. Thank you very much for your attention to a very important topic.
Thank you so much. Item 3.2 is a presentation of the Civic Web Portal, and I'm going to hand this over to our City Clerk, Rebecca Barr.
And I'm going to steal it first and give you a little context. First, we're very pleased to present the Civic Web Portal both to the council and to the community. And this is some technology we're going to be rolling out in a few weeks. I first want to thank Rebecca Barr, City Clerk, for her work in putting this together. Basically, over the next year, we're going to be improving different parts of our website that need some improvement in order to make it easier for the public to participate and understand what's going on in their local government. The first piece of this is to update what we call a Civic Web Portal. And this really is just a piece that allows, makes it easier for the public to participate and watch council meetings, commissions, meetings, find where there are information on, look at past agendas, staff reports, all integrated in one location. We've been very lucky as a community that Sonoma Valley Community Communications has historically stored our video on their website, but if you wanted to watch a council meeting, you needed to go to a different website to watch it, and you weren't able to see the agenda and the video and everything in one location. This new technology basically puts all that back on the city's website through an outside source and really provides a lot easier interface for our residents to really be able to participate and watch what's happening in council meetings and commissions. So I really wanted, I'll hand it over here to Rebecca as soon as she's gets it up. I'm getting this sign, I'm going to stretch. So she pulls the site up. But there's definitely a lot of work that has gone into doing these type of technology improvements. And I think as we pull it up, hopefully it will be good to see.
I apologize. The piece got disconnected. The laptop got disconnected, so it.
If you want, could we do the consent calendar and then come back?
Yeah,
that would be great.
Is
Thank
that
you.
proper? Can we
that
do
would
this?
That would be fine.
All right. Moving on to item 4, our consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. At this time, council may decide to change the order of the agenda. Do we have any questions or anything pulled from the consent calendar?
I'd like to pull 4.3. Fire Creek pedestrian and bicycle bridge.
Okay.
Just,
All right, so 4.3, about the Friar Creek pedestrian bridge. Anything else? I will take it out to the public for public comment. And are we, do we do a separate discussion on the item that's been pulled, or is this gonna be
No, you should
everything?
do this, everything on the consent calendar, including the item that's been pulled.
Okay. So this is a discussion, any comments on anything on the consent calendar, and including the Friar Creek pedestrian bridge?
Hi, I'm Matt Metzler, and this precedes, I think, all of the current members of the City Council. This is a long time coming. Thinking back, I've probably been to a half a dozen meetings about this, starting in 2007. I live right at the corner of Friar Creek and Newcomb. Every day at 8:30 and 2:50, you can see students who live on the other side of Friar Creek, who live on Manor Drive in Harrington area, jumping the fence, walking over to Adele Harrison and the high school. Generations of Sonoma Valley High School students who live west of Friar Creek have been hopping the fence illegally. There's barbed wire, the barbed wire gets cut, and they put up the barbed wire again. Many years ago, a kid a friend of my son's showed up at my door who got cut by the barbed wire, hopping the fence there. Anyway, we've been a lot of meetings about this, and it's been well vetted. It was approved, and it was close to being, construction was close to beginning back in 2011 when we lost all of the redevelopment agency funds that was going to pay for this. So anyway, this would really make a difference with reducing the traffic and allowing people to get around town by bicycle and not have to drive their kids especially to the high school and to Adele Harrison. My kids are grown and gone now. My daughter volunteered for 4 years at the library. It would have made it a lot easier for her to bicycle to the library, or for people from our neighborhood to get over to Whole Foods or Safeway without having to go on First Street West, which is pretty treacherous with all the parked cars. So anyway, I'm glad to see that hopefully this is going to finally happen. And there's another generation of kids, and hopefully it will benefit them. My kids missed out on this, but I'm just glad to see this finally is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
JJ Abadili, I live on Ingram Drive, and I'm a heavy bike and run and pedestrian user of the various paths and streets around Sonoma. And the Newcomb connection over to Friar Creek is the most obvious east-west missing link that we have south of the plaza, and it's a no-brainer in whatever frictions that may exist to making it happen. I hope you guys can work to remove them. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Marilee Ebert. I live on Neal Court, just a stone's throw from where this wonderful bridge should be. I came to the council meetings. Let's see, I know that my son, who's now almost 22 and finishing up college, was a 7th grader when he came here and gave out my petition signatures and what we found out by canvassing our neighborhood, whether or not the neighbors were in agreement with this. And I can tell you that more than 98% of our neighbors in that surrounding neighborhood agreed that there should be a bridge there. I found only 3 neighbors who did not want it, and they were the 3 neighbors who live right next door to where the bridge will be. I've also sewn up a lot of pairs of torn jeans and bike shorts because of my kids jumping over the fence. And I also want to just say that it's really a safety issue. I've got a daughter as well. And if you come down the bike path there, if there should be somebody who should not be there and they're chasing after children or anything like that, you have to run almost a half a mile until you can get off of that that bike path in a safe manner. So this is just a safety issue, and I'm really excited that it's back, and I really hope that the next generation of Sonomans get to use this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for further discussion and an action.
I'd just like to make a comment. It's interesting, I now serve on Sonoma County Transportation Authority, but this has been, as people have said, this has been around a long time. And actually, the last person to serve on this committee was Lori Gallion. And I told her that I hoped that things were going to get better on this funding. And it's interesting, other cities cooperated. They gave up funding for this bridge because they felt it was time for this to be done. And so by the time it got to me, having to take a vote, it had already been decided. So I appreciate Petaluma and Santa Rosa and the county because they gave up some of this funding, I believe. And what this actually does for everyone to know is that the funding is in the amount of $501,000, and that means the city would pay approximately $65,000 out of the general fund when this for the construction of the project. So these are all really good things, and I'm just really appreciative that this came to us, and I think Sonoma is very, very lucky. I think we always complain we're at the end of the pipe. Guess what? Not this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any action?
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution. And I'd like to make the motion to approve a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sonoma authorizing the filing of an application for funding assigned to Metropolitan Transportation Commission and committing any necessary matching funds and stating assurance to complete the project.
Second.
All right, I have a first, I have a second. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Agramonte?
Aye.
Mayor Henley?
Aye.
Thank you.
And now, next we also need an action to approve everything else on the consent calendar. Mr. Cook?
I'll make a motion to approve items 4.1, 4.2, 4.4, 4.5, and 4.6 of the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards?
Aye.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Agramonte?
Aye.
Mayor Henley?
Aye.
Thank you.
Are we ready?
Yes. Okay. So, first I apologize, my cords came apart. So yes, this is, Kathy said, it's extremely exciting to be able to present this to you this evening. One of the biggest complaints that I've received since I've been here as the city clerk is the inaccessibility and the difficulty to get to the website as far as the agendas and the minutes. There are, so I'm very excited to present the Civic Web Portal, the new meetings. It's the public home for agendas, minutes, and any meeting-related information. This will be a button that it's not attached yet, but it will be directly from our homepage of our city website. And you can see as you go through it, a brief tour of the portal. You have your banners, you have your easy to find schedule of meetings up in the top corner, top right corner. You have today's meeting, upcoming meetings, and then recent meetings. And you'll see across that their headers, home, calendar, meeting, search, meet your council. The different tiles you can click on. If you go into, just real brief, I'll click on the meet your council tile. And you'll go through in the individual information about different council members. You can see your appointments that you're in for 2017. And eventually, when we do go live, these will actually, if there's a link to that agency, you'll be able to click it and be able to go directly to their website from this page. Your contact information, very easy for the public to find how to get a hold of you. Something new that you see as well is we now have city council email addresses. Instead of using your personal emails, all email will be going to a city email. There is also, eventually you'll see terms of office coming through, and you can see it'll list as they go through and they'll be building. New also as well is the email for the city council. If you want to email the city council as a whole, you can click this and it'll email to all of them. Then you can go through, there's each of the pages, one thing about this is they link to different pages in the website, but you can always go back at the home button or go to the top across the tile. So going into meetings, I'm going to click over to meetings and show you, this is how now you'll land on the different commissions and committees. All commissions and committees of the city will be on this page. Some of the information's already inputted. It's a lot of going back and inputting history, so it will be a work in progress as far as the history side. You can see all of the different commissions and committees are here. There's a members tab. Again, it goes back, if you click for the council, it would go back to the previous page where your personal information is or your individual information. One of the really exciting pieces about this is if you go into, if you want to see the meeting for May 15th, this is the last meeting. It actually was live. This is now what the public will see in the agenda packet. If you scroll down, you'll see there's the packet, and you can click on the item if you want to see the attachment, and it takes you directly to the packet item. This is the most recent one. A really exciting piece of this as well is you see the video button. You can now, this is a time-stamped video of the last meeting. And you can click into this. You can say you want to look at the annual report for the police and the annual report and police report. You can go, it pulls up the item on the side, and if you click the little camera, it takes you directly to that spot in the video. So you can review the items and listen to the video at the same time. Previously, our council videos were not actually attached to our city website. They were on SVTV 27's website with actually, there was no link from our city website to those. And unfortunately, they were only able to be stored for 6 months. Through this new site, it is something that's going to be for the life of the system, through the life of the video. One other thing that I'll show you quickly is the search feature, which is extremely robust. It's like a Google search engine. Anything that is in a council packet, any documents that we upload through the council packet or in the backside, old resolutions, old ordinances, it will be immediately searchable to the public. So if someone wants to find a resolution from 2006, they can search through here, and you can do an easy Google search, basic type, and it will bring up any documents. This is what's called the Document Center. It brings them up for the items that they're mentioned water on. So it's a very robust search engine. And also they can subscribe to the type of meeting, an individual can subscribe to the type of meeting that they want to say they want to watch something that's going on. That's the search, I'm sorry. I'm flying a little faster this, I apologize. They can subscribe, say someone wants to hear about what's going on at the council meeting or a specific item at Planning Commission. They can subscribe themselves, and anytime there's a change to that meeting type or that item, they get a notice via email. Really exciting because the meeting agendas now are provided to all of you, to the public, in one click. We don't have to manually, we're not going to be manually delivering them any longer. They will be, it's one click, you'll get them to your iPads, which we've implemented as well. It's going to cost the city about $600 per meeting, which is what we were printing in packets, and the cost of distributing those and preparing them.
We're saving.
So we're saving $600. As I said cost, I'm sorry. We're saving about $600 per meeting. And once we get all of the commissions and committees on this, it'll be a more larger savings.
So I just want to thank Rebecca. There's a lot of work behind these things, hours and hours of work that goes, and we'll be continuing to put up new content. I think the other great thing about this site is it's also web friendly on any mobile device. So if you want to watch a council meeting when you're on vacation in Hawaii, you can tune in and watch. And it's completely device friendly. So we'll be rolling this out for the June. Right the week before the June 19th meeting, and then we'll be taking comments and feedback and continuing to tweak as we move forward.
And you'll see a press release. I believe the press release will go in. I'm hoping the 12th, the paper of the Tuesday the 12th, I think, if I can get it over to you guys. And it'll have the address of how you can get to this if you don't want to go through the city's website.
Thank you. Are there any council comments?
Oh, thank you so much to Rebecca, and also a special shout out to our city manager's husband who took our photos free of charge. Thank you very much. Send our thanks along to him, please.
And I'd like to thank Rebecca and, of course, Kathy's husband for taking our photos. They're pretty darn cute, Kathy. Thank you. And, but Rebecca, the first day you came to the city, I looked at you and said, please do something with our website. And you said, there's an agreement here in the administration office that this is something that needs to be done. So I am so pleased. Honestly, I can't tell you how grateful I am, because the people in Sonoma now can actually go to certain things and see them live, or can go back and just look at their website. I'm very appreciative. Thank you.
Anybody else? I would like to echo thank you to Ms. Barr. I think, especially in the future, we're getting better about communicating with the public about what's happening. And if anyone under the current website has tried to find a packet from like a year ago, it was so hard to do. So thank you so much. Well, moving forward, item 6.1. Discussion, consideration, and possible action to adopt a resolution approving the pilot art program, temporary public art exhibit, Albert Paley Thresholds, inside Sonoma's Plaza in Depot Park from July 1st through September 26, 2017, and authorizing the city manager to execute any agreements necessary to move forward with the pilot art program. And we will begin with the city manager.
Right. Mayor Hunley, council members, and members of the community, we're happy to be back in front of you talking about a partnership project with Sonoma Valley Museum of Art. And as the mayor read, this is for a 3-month pilot project to look at bringing some world-renowned sculptures to our community. So in, I think, January, February, we came to council, asked you the question if you were interested in exploring this, showed you what this could look like. And there was definitely support and direction from the council to move forward and to see what we could bring back. And so for the past few months, staff has been working with Linda Cano and some of her board members, and I know some that she is here, and some folks may be ready to speak to you once we do the staff presentation here. So some of the work we've done is we've looked at the different sites. We are looking at where in the plaza and also Depot. There's been engineering studies. There's been a variety of work to really look at where these sculptures can be placed. They were also, as we got to a final recommendation, staff basically brought them to the Cultural Fine Arts Commission, who reviewed them, and also their recommendations are included in your packet. So the bottom line is where we are tonight is we're asking council to, and we are recommending that you approve 3 sculptures. And some of these sculptures are kind of, there are 2 parts. The theme of this installation is thresholds. So some of them are, it's 2 sculptures creating a gateway or a threshold. But there are 3 locations on the plaza, all on the, I'm always bad with my north and south, the southern side of the plaza, away from the kids' playgrounds, was one thing we wanted to do. And there is one in Depot Park, and then the museum is also working collaboratively with the community center, and I believe they'll be one or two over there as well. So in front of you tonight is the actions is basically to approve these sites on city property and the sculptures. There are pictures and information in your packet. Also to authorize me as the city manager to finish, we're working on some agreements with the museum and potentially the artist as well. And originally when the museum came forward, they were, each of these pieces of art will have some signage and description with them, both in English and in Spanish. And their hope was to be able to get some of that kind of sponsored and within, but the reality is they've had some additional costs with some of the engineering work, et cetera. So they are asking for the city as part of the partnership to pay for the signage. Again, the art museum itself is paying for all of the costs of the artwork to come, to be displayed, etc. There's no cost to the city on that. Our costs have been staff time to really do a beta project of how could we do public art in the plaza and to explore what this could look like. So there is a request for the city to help waive the fees for having the artwork on the plaza, and then to basically help fund some of the signage, which is a total of $5,865, $1,000 which would come from your discretionary council fund, and the rest would need to come from general fund reserves because there's no longer any money left in the discretionary fund. Before I hand it to council for comments, just a couple other brief things. I do want to say that, again, the original intention was this of how do we try to bring some public art back to the community in a different way. This has not been done, as I understand it, in Sonoma in quite some time, and this is really a 3-month temporary and has been a great pilot project should it move forward. I want to thank Lisa Jansen to my left. Lisa really has been the operational head as our special events manager. She understands how to work with our public works teams, working and interfacing with safety issues and security issues, identification issues. So she's been working closely with the Art Museum and then also Rebecca, our city clerk. But it definitely taken some time to move and bring this forward to you tonight. But the action for you tonight is to consider whether you would recommend, and then would be moving forward and would be installed in June. So with that, I'll turn it back to the mayor.
Thank you. Are there any council questions at this time? Seeing none, I will take it out to the public for public comment.
Kate Schertz, 622 Oregon Street, Sonoma. I'm the chair of the Cultural and Fine Arts Commission for the City of Sonoma, and I am absolutely thrilled about this project. In 2009, the City Council passed a resolution to create a public art program. That was the same year that the Great Depression hit. Every year since then, there's been I don't know what you call it, a rebut to the resolution, or saying we just don't have the money to do anything. So we haven't had any public art, except what we're going to have with the General Vallejo statue, which is being funded totally by private funds, and our one bicycle rack, which was public art. This is a fabulous opportunity at a very low cost, and it encourages the agenda we've been working on for the last 4 or 5 years to make Sonoma more than wine, more than food, but to make it a city of culture as well. And this has been a really major point for the Chamber of Commerce, for the city, for the county, and for the city. So I urge you to appropriate this very small amount of money to make the city of Sonoma on the map, on the art map, as well as the wine and cheese and food map. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Cano, Sonoma Valley Museum of Art. I want to thank the council for considering this public art partnership. We think it's a great pilot project to explore working together, how SVMA and the city and also other arts organizations can work together to celebrate art and hopefully to bring more art to our community. Albert Paley has been hailed as one of the greatest living metal sculptors, and his public art can be seen in public spaces throughout the United States and abroad, in large cities and in small towns. His work can be seen at libraries, at transit stations, at harbors, along highways, at zoos, at parks, plazas, fire stations, and at sculpture gardens. We're very fortunate that he's made his public art available to Sonoma. In fact, he's very excited to see his public art installed here. His artistic style of romantic naturalism that emphasizes the beauty of natural organic forms is a perfect fit with the area's naturally beautiful geography and Sonoma's lifestyle. The benefits of public art have been very well documented, and this project has great potential to engage our community, to enhance civic dialogue, to create an economic driver through increased activity in the area, to connect our community with art and artists, to enhance the public's appreciation of art, to provide a new way for residents and visitors to experience Sonoma. I want to thank Kathy Capriola, Rebecca Barr, and Lisa Jansen for their professionalism and dedication to this project, and likewise our partners at W Real Estate and the Sonoma Community Center, who've been very enthusiastic collaborators. We're very excited to see the heart of our community transformed into a work of art.
Thank you. And if there's additional commenters, if a couple people will wait by the door during this comment, we can keep it going.
Hi, David Wells, 341 First Street West. I've been fortunate to work with arts organizations like the Community Center and Transcendence and the Film Festival, and it's been a pleasure to work with the museum on this project and many others in the past. And I just want to say how happy I am and how thrilled I am for this, and I'm really excited. I had the chance to interview a bunch of elementary school students last week before they got out for summer, and I asked them, what is your perception of art, and what do you think of art, and what would the world be like without it? And they all pretty much said the same thing. It was, my life would be boring, and art allows me to express myself, and it allows me to put my thoughts onto paper and be creative and not, do other things that might be damaging to my friends or my family. So I know the kids are really excited about this as well, and I hope you guys move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Brown. As a past Cultural and Fine Arts Commissioner and as a council member, the City Council was very supportive of getting the museum started. We had redevelopment funds to give, and we gave. And the museum has proved to be a fine partner for the city. And this public art project is excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lucy Hamlin. I live in Boy Springs, but I volunteered at the museum for the past 12 years. And I spend a lot of time in the plaza. I'm excited to reinvigorate the plaza for me. I've been there 100 times. It's the same old thing. To have these fabulous, large sculptures kind of dialoguing with our environment and the tourists around us and ourselves, I just can't wait for it to happen. So I'm so hopeful you will approve of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Johnny Westham. I'm the Executive Director of the Sonoma Valley Visitors Bureau on the Plaza. And on behalf of the Executive Committee of the Visitors Bureau, we fully support the pilot project to bring art to public places here. Do we feel that art's going to bring, or art in public places is going to bring droves of tourism? Absolutely not. But what we feel is it's going to add to that arts and culture community and bring out a lot more of that vibrancy that Sonoma has. The mural on Broadway is really cool. I consider that art in public places. But I think bringing the sculpture out is really going to soften the environment as much as it is going to add a lot more value to the experiences of people who live here, who commute here, and also visit here, because it does have that authenticity that Sonoma has and what Sonoma thrives on. So thank you for your consideration on this. Also, I do want to give a shout to Linda Cano from the museum. She arrived in Sonoma just shortly after I did, and during our first meeting, we talked about art in public places, and to see how much she's been able to do with city staff and with your consideration over the past, I believe it's 12 months or so, is incredible. So thank you for your consideration here. If there's anything that the Visitors Bureau can do to support you on this, if research is required, if you want to know what other cities are doing, how other cities like ours have implemented this type of project, we're more than happy to get behind it, help you down that path so we can all make the decisions that are best for our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Hank Martinson. I'm 472 4th Street West, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Community Center. Our president, Annie Bauer, wasn't able to make it tonight, or she's running late. So I just want to say that we're very excited to be part of the art project. Our mission is brightening lives through the arts, education, and community service. So this really fits in with what we're doing, and we're very excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Leslie Jaquith, and I'm a founding member of the museum and have volunteered there since the beginning. And I've been fortunate to travel a lot in the world and have many of my memories are of the art that I've seen all over the world. And I think that if people come to Sonoma and see how bold and available art can be in their communities, they'll take it back to their communities, or they'll tell their friends, and their friends will come to Sonoma to see the art, along with like the wine you mentioned. I think also in this meeting today, there's been a lot of talk about updating, and that's what this is an example of, is updating and putting art out into the community, as well as just keeping it in the museum. It can come out into the public awareness. And art is a vacation. For me, art is a vacation from life. And it helps give us a different perspective. And also, by putting art available for free, it's an exposure to the population who otherwise don't get to travel and or go to museums. So thank you for your consideration of this. It's very exciting.
Thank you.
I'm Winnie Farwell. I'm at 452 2nd Street East in Sonoma, and I too represent the Community Center. When I first heard of this idea earlier in the year, I was very excited about it, and I do hope you agree. I've also had the opportunity to travel a lot, and a lot of cities across our country as well as the world do have public art installations. Some of them have public art requirements in their zoning. And it only enhances the enjoyment of the city and the people that visit, as well as the people that live there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for discussion and an action. Yeah.
So I have a brother who lives in Kaiserslautern, Germany, and they're probably one of the most well-known cities in Germany for public art, and it was a small town. It was wiped out in World War II, most of it, and they brought it back to life, and it's just beautiful, the art you see there, and every time I see an image of that, it reminds me of my brother, and he's been over there for 20-something years. So I'm fully in support of this. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm glad that Depot and the Community Center are involved as well, because it ties the whole town together. So, thank you.
Councilmember Cook.
Yeah, I also want to say that I will be supporting this tonight, and I do want to thank our city manager for doing some extra work. This is a pilot program, and there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, and I think we're very lucky to have a city manager that could really go through that and make sure that we're, our kids are protected and we could have the art. And hopefully this is something that we can continue. I've supported it from the beginning because I really believe that this is something that is local. We are a tourism-based economy here, but we have to give back to the residents, and I think that this is one way that we can have, it's a free display for our residents.
Councilmember Agamonte.
Thank you. I'm so happy about this because I believe we have wonderful culture here, as our first speaker said, but this really is going to kick it into a whole new dimension, and it's something I think that's good, healthy for us, and I can envision teachers bringing children to look at the statues, to look at this art, and to imagine what they think it is. And I'm just really excited that we're all part of that, and I, like others, in support of this.
Councilmember Harrington.
I support this art as well. I'm very excited for it to be here. The only thing I'll say, and this is really about future projects, is I would really love to see the costs associated with public art. I think that's a great way for our tourism industry to give our town something that tourists will also enjoy. I would love it if they were paying for this. We have a very, very tight budget. When you look at the amount of money we spend on recreation, it's very small. And so forward going, I hope that this project works. I think it's great. But I also think that something like this, it's $5,000, is the perfect opportunity for our tourism industry to give like a donation to the town, because it isn't really free, because the people of Sonoma pay their taxes and those taxes are being used to put this out. So it's a great project and very wonderful, and I hope it continues, and that when we have more time to think about it, that that the city can donate the space and the time and the staff time, but that the cost of doing the project, we can get more partners on board for that.
And I will also be supporting this tonight. And I was trying to think, so it's been about 4.5 months, start to finish, which I think is absolutely impressive for putting this together, particularly with a sculptor of this status. And a huge thank you to Linda for bringing the vision to the city. And I know there's been a lot of back and forth about exactly what it would look like, where it would go, and how many. And you know, what the safest way to go is, and I really appreciate everyone going through all the, you know, steps necessary to make sure that we are doing this in a safe way that ensures that we can do it again in the future. So I think this is going to be the first round of something exciting, and I'm sure there's going to be at least a few people out there who are not going to care for these sculptures, and I think that's great. I think it inspires discussion, so I look forward to all of the discussions that I have about all of this art. So with that, we have Mr. Cook.
I'd like to make a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sonoma approving the temporary art exhibit of Albert Paley, Thresholds Inside the Sonoma Plaza and Depot Park from July 1st to September 26th, 2017, and authorizing the city manager to execute any agreements necessary to move forward with the pilot art program.
I'll second.
All right, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Agramonte?
Aye.
Mayor Hunley?
Aye.
Thank you.
And moving on to item 6.2, discussion, consideration, and possible action on a four-way stop intersection recommendation for the Traffic Safety Committee at 2nd Street East and Patton Street. And we will be beginning with our Public Works Director. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This issue before you tonight involves a long-standing request for four-way stop intersections along 2nd Street East. The area that we're talking about is lower 2nd Street East. Some of the cross streets that already have two-way stop intersections are Patton, France, and Chase Street. But none of them have four-way stop intersections. I just want to give you some quick background. Way back in August, we, at the residents' request, we did a stealth radar speed survey. Now, this isn't the radar trailer that you sometimes see along the side of the road. People see it coming and they slow down. This is a little box that's strapped to something like a light pole or a street light pole that most people would not normally see that's there. So it's capturing more accurate data. And it showed that speeding was not a problem along 2nd Street East. Again, the request came, it wasn't during a school year, so we performed it again during a school year. And almost identical results came from that study. In July of 2016, we took it to the Traffic Safety Committee. And they asked for more information on traffic calming measures. So we came back in October to the Traffic Safety Committee with various traffic calming measures, which could include speed humps, rumble strips, traffic narrowing, speed radar signs, a number of different measures. And at that time, the committee recommended four-way stop intersection at 2nd Street East and Patton Street. My understanding from the committee is that they chose this location because it has unique issues of site visibility. We were proceeding to install that four-way stop at 2nd Street East and Patton Street, but there were some trees that needed removal at that intersection. And so we took that per city code to the city tree committee, and the tree committee denied the removal of those trees, which would block the sight lines to the stop sites, the two new stop signs. So we had a conflict between two city committees. We took it back again to the Traffic Safety Committee, knowing that the tree committee had made their decision. But again, they recommended a four-way stop intersection at 2nd Street East and Patton Street. So with that conflict between city committees, we are bringing it to the city council. I would like to point out that the California Vehicle Code says that traffic control devices, of which stop signs are, must conform to the uniform standards and specifications promulgated by Caltrans that are placed on a street or highway. One of those standards is the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And in that manual, here are the warrants that would dictate a multi-way stop intersection. 5 or more crashes during a 12-month period, or vehicle volume on the major street, which averages 300 vehicles per hour in an 8-hour period. But we can reduce that volume if speeds exceed 40 miles per hour. Here's some of the data that we collected. The average speed on 2nd Street East is between 19 and 20 miles an hour. The prima facie speed limit is 25 miles an hour. We've had only about 3 accidents in the last 5 years, which is less than 1 vehicle accident per year. And there's less than 100 vehicles per hour when combining all the traffic for the entire day on 2nd Street East into an 8-hour period, just doing that as a conservative approach. So, is the accident warrant met? Is the accident warrant met of 5 or more reported crashes in a 12-month period? And no, we only have less than 1 vehicle crash per year. Is the volume warrant met of at least 300 vehicles per hour for any 8 hours of an average day? No, there's only about 169 vehicles per hour, and that's using a very conservative estimating approach. And can we reduce the volume criteria? No, because speeds do not exceed 40 miles per hour on 2nd Street East. I have a number of slides just to give you kind of a visual tour. I won't spend much time on these. This is heading south from Patton Street along 2nd Street East, between Patton and France Street, between Patton and France Street, and approaching France Street. Here we're at the intersection of France Street. This is looking south between France and Chase, again between France and Chase, and then south from Chase Street, looking down toward MacArthur, then turning around and coming north, looking toward Chase Street, between France and Patton, looking north from Patton up toward East Napa Street. Here's a look to the northwest from the intersection of Patton and 2nd Street East. There's a small plum tree, which is the left arrow, and then there's also a larger elm tree, which would block the sight lines to any type of stop sign placed at that intersection. I should note that the resident does not necessarily object to the removals, but the tree committee did. And we also have a red curb to assist on cars coming eastbound out of Patton to see traffic coming down 2nd Street East. This is looking southeast from the intersection with Patton. And there are 2 crepe myrtle trees which would block sight distances to a stop sign. Again, the resident doesn't necessarily object to the removal, although they would definitely prefer that the trees be retained to the extent feasible. Again, looking to the southwest of Patton, we also have some more red curb. Here's at France Street, looking to the southeast, to the southwest. Here's, about a year ago, we decided to put some signs at France Street that say cross traffic does not stop. We felt that if some people might be thinking that this is a 4-way stop, then these signs could definitely assist in that clarification. Looking to the northwest of France Street, there are red curbs, one more for the hydrant, but one which is slightly faded and needs to be renewed along 2nd Street East to aid in the sight distance of eastbound cars on France Street. And looking to the northeast of France, at the northeast at Chase Street, one of the problems over the past year or so has been a lot of residential construction along this route. And many staff and residents have noticed a lot of construction traffic. Of course, we don't expect that to continue, but this is an example of that. Looking to the southeast, looking to the southwest, looking to the northwest at Chase. This isn't in the city, this is actually in Stockton, but here's an example of a possible traffic calming measure, a speed hump. It's shown with some standard traffic markings, but there would have to be many additional traffic markings and signage that go along with speed humps. They do create a problem with sweeping, a little bit of problem sometimes with drainage. They do cause problems with emergency vehicles, and they are fairly expensive to maintain. Another traffic calming measure might be fixed radar speed signs. Again, I'm not referring to the radar speed trailers, but a fixed sign that might be solar powered. These are fairly common. We have several around the city already, and these could provide some feedback. But again, as our traffic data showed, speed isn't necessarily the problem. Stop signs really, by engineering standards, shouldn't be used as traffic calming measures. Studies have shown that often when you put stop signs where they're not required, that the public tends to ignore them. Probably only about half the people come to maybe a rolling stop, and 25% of the people don't stop at all. And also another study showed that if you put stop signs where not warranted, that in order to make up time, the peak speed between stop signs can increase over not having stop signs at all. The city's risk pool, a REMIF, is recommended against installing traffic control devices where not warranted. So the staff recommendation is to deny the Traffic Safety Committee recommendation for a 4-way stop at 2nd East and Patton, as it's not warranted. I would invite other traffic calming measures under the understanding that speeding is not necessarily the problem as presented by the staff's data. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. Maybe I'm just missing it in here. So what exactly were the underlying complaints? I saw a reference to the traffic forum in here, but I don't see it.
Yeah, generally, the main complaint is for speeding along 2nd Street East.
And when was the last study done, speed study?
February of 2016.
And is there any reason to anticipate that anything's changed since then?
No, we performed it back in 2015 in August, and the exact same data results were reflected again in February of 2016.
Any other questions from my council? Seeing none, I'll take it out to the public. Thank you so much. public for public comment.
Hi, I'm Matt Metzler, and I'm a avid bicyclist, and I think the city needs to keep in mind with everything regarding traffic about what they can do to meet their bicycle-friendly city goals and to reduce the greenhouse gases by encouraging people to bicycle instead of drive. And 2nd Street East is a bike route, and I think that that should be taken in consideration. Also, I live on Friar Creek Drive, and we had a terrible problem on Friar Creek Drive for years with people coming towards Broadway from the west who would take Friar Creek as a shortcut to avoid the left turn on Broadway going towards the high school. And maybe 5 or 8 years, 10 years, I don't remember when, they established traffic calming, a couple of speed humps, and they really made a difference. We really don't have nearly as much problem with those traffic calming measures. And as a bicyclist, the speed humps don't slow bicyclists down. I mean, the speed humps are not an impediment to the bicycle route. So anyway, I just wanted to point those out. That is a major north-south bike route. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment on this item?
Wendy Peterson, 608 2nd Street East. So I'm the Crepe Myrtle house. And again, I came tonight to thank both commissions and now the City Council for looking at this issue. As you can see, it's complex. There are lots of studies that have been done, and 2nd Street, like many other streets in Sonoma, is continually becoming more and more crowded just for a number of reasons. Again, thank you for mentioning it's now a bike path. It's also a route for people to drop kids at the high school. It's become just increasingly a way for people moving around Sonoma that are coming up Broadway to make the turnaround. We get additional parking when there are events on the plaza that are moving into our neighborhood. We do have a lot of construction everywhere all the time, which again adds to the visibility. And again, I'm not sure, and as all the studies have shown, that stop signs are the actual issue. I mean, Patton Street is a very narrow street, and where it crosses 2nd, there's a huge dip. So again, people are edging out, trying to get a line of sight. And again, we as residents are just trying to ask all of us, how can we make sure that we are safe, our visitors are safe, our children are safe? And, we're very open to, having our trees taken down so that if a stop sign works, or look at other calming measures. That particular intersection, as you saw, the corner that's kind of across from me, has a telephone pole. It doesn't have a sidewalk on the Patton Street side. It has lots of growth, so it really is a tough corner to kind of edge out and see. And then on the other side of the street, there's a large hedge that's been approved to be that high. So I don't know how to sort of get to what we all want, which is safety in our neighborhoods, and yet keeping trees and making sure that we don't have the city run into things that they've put up that then will cause even more problems. So I'm just here to say thank you and try to help us figure out what the solution might be. And so again, that's really what I wanted to get up and say this evening. Thank you.
Chris Petlock. So, I use that route pretty regularly for myself to commute to work. I come through the high school fields and then up towards the plaza. And, generally, I don't see the issues there, but I agree when the events are going on or busy weekends are going on and I'm going up there with my family, it's very difficult to get up that street because of parking. And, again, I don't know if a stop sign would help, but it's definitely an area that just needs some attention because it is used by so many people that live in the southeastern part of the city to get into town. The City Service Commission has really been working hard to encourage all of the events to promote bicycling to events. And so I think what maybe part of what you're finding is people park in other places, get out of there, and then use their bikes to get downtown or get around town. But I can tell you that it is difficult at certain times, and some attention could be used there. I don't know if the speed humps or the stop sign or whatever it is, but it is getting more and more difficult. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Brown. I too live on Friar Creek, and in my opinion, speed bumps work.
Thank you.
Winnie Farwell. Again, I live on 2nd Street East, but between East Napa and East Spain. So not the southern part, but I drive the southern part a lot. And the only thing I can add to what has already been discussed quite well is that the photographs that you were just presented with, I'm not sure what time they were taken, but they don't show very many cars parked on the streets. There's always a lot of cars parked on those streets, and that really exacerbates the problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tamara Honeyborn, 558 2nd Street East. And that is the narrowest part of 2nd Street East. And I think this is where the most important address of the traffic issue and the stop sign or speed bump should be applied. It is really quite dangerous at Patton and 2nd Street East because I can sit there and watch the quantity of traffic that cuts through on Patton to detour around the plaza, both construction traffic, local traffic, tourist traffic, everyone does it. And that particular place coming out, as you could see from the photograph, with the trees and the stop sign, you can stop at the stop sign, but where the stop sign is way back at the corner. So you have to edge your way out after stopping at the stop sign to see whether it's clear. But by the time you get to the point where you can see whether it's clear, with the traffic parked on that section, you can't really see. Your visibility is so questionable that you're taking your life into your hands when you pull out. You're just hoping that there's no car coming overly fast. So I think really something does have to be addressed at that particular corner. And especially the study having been done almost a year and a half ago, I think everyone knows that in a year and a half, we've had a huge increase in our tourism and our traffic locally with construction. And we're thinking of developing more areas within the plaza and near the plaza. And so our traffic, we're not going to see the same traffic as we have today, just as we didn't a year and a half ago. So it's going to continue to increase, and our street, 2nd Street East, is a cut-through street, not only for locals, but it's a cut-through street for construction traffic, and it's a cut-through street because now the tourists are using it with Waze, because Waze is showing that the plaza traffic you have to bypass. So I think, it's really an issue that we need to develop for us. The neighbors, we all showed up at the earlier commission meetings. We all asked for this. And I think that maybe the studies were done, but perhaps they were done at in a larger city, maybe not a city like Sonoma. And all I know is when I try to back out of my driveway on 2nd Street East, it's pretty dangerous because there's always cars parked. And the cars, even though they may not be going 25 miles an hour, they're still coming fast enough where I can't see them on that narrow bit of 2nd Street East. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion and possible action. Councilmember Cook.
Well, I'll start off. This has been an issue for some time, and I've talked to a lot of people about it. I will be supporting the stop sign on Patton, but I would have rather seen it go down a little bit further. But I know that Public Works has been working, and there's always a lot of moving parts. I believe this is a good start for 2nd Street East. I possibly think that within time, there would probably be another stop sign down south. And the reason I say that is because one of the public members was true. If you took a picture of it at probably 9 or 10 o'clock or at 5 o'clock when everybody comes home and you see those cars, I drive it almost every day. I'm a Presswood mom. But I come down France. But it's just one of those that when people get on there, they're just, zooming. And I mean, I've seen it. And I know the traffic studies, and there's been a lot of studies, but for some reason, this doesn't show up in those studies. And probably the biggest reason that I'm making my vote tonight would, if you look at 5th Street East, has a stop sign. 2nd Street East doesn't. So that tells me right there that whatever we're gearing this off of, there's got to be something flawed. And I think it's because of the unique situation of so many cars being parked, being tight. And hopefully within the next couple of years, we'll be looking at possibly putting another one down there to try to slow down for the residents' sake and for the school moms. Thank you.
Councilmember Harrington.
So I live on East Napa at 2nd Street East, so I'm very familiar with this street, and I think that it's definitely true that as the plaza becomes more and more difficult to navigate, people don't want to make a left-hand turn off of East Napa onto Broadway, and so they would rather, at the four-way stop sign, turn left on 2nd Street East. There is clearly increasing traffic there. Not only the speed, but just the volume, and that's a residential street. People are using that residential street as a substitute for Broadway, which is really tough. And I myself have witnessed an almost accident with a kid on a bike. It's great that it didn't happen, but it's gonna happen because of the volume of traffic there. And so I support the stop sign. I don't know if it's the perfect fix, but it's a good start, I think. And I hope that we can do more things to calm traffic on that street and actually discourage people from taking East Napa as an alternate parallel route to Broadway.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
So I'm not going to support a stop sign at that particular location because I've probably driven that longer than 26 years now, up and down that street. And I've spoken with quite a few of the folks that live on the street that don't really want stop signs, because part of the issue is when you leave off of East Napa Street, you have the bridge, which is like a one-way street. So that's a calming measure. And then you get down to that little corner where my office was on 1st Street East for years, and I live on Chase, and I went down that street past Wendy's house all the time and stopped for a glass of wine once in a while there. But what I see is that people who live in the area, they know the rules of the road, or the unwritten rules of the road, and they work together. There's been a massive, Keith Hughes built a house that the construction went on for 2 years there, and there were 15 or 18 trucks there every single day for that entire time, and now that's over. Another project on the corner of Chase. If I was going to do anything, I would work on a couple of pop-outs down the street. I think we have bigger issues in town. Your street, East Napa, past the community center, that's like a racetrack every morning. And I walk my kids to school quite a bit, and we walk from 3rd Street East up to the community center. And I would be thinking more about calming the traffic down on its way in as well on East Napa, because we go from 40 miles an hour to 25, and I think law enforcement has had the radar sign out there for off and on for a long time, a couple of years. And that really hasn't calmed that down. But I know the actual speeds. I know when I drive up the street, and you talk about Presswood moms, if they haul past my house, a lot of them hit the dips one time on Chase Street, and then they don't do it again. So that stops them. But I would be more inclined to look at a couple of traffic calming measures, a couple of pop-outs on the street. There's a lot of remodeling that's gone on the street, and they don't really eliminate the garages, but they don't use the garages anymore on 2nd Street. And I just don't like the idea of if it was in front of my house, not speaking for Wendy or anybody there, but when you stop, then if you're in a big 4-wheel drive truck that's got a diesel motor in it, you're going to hear it. And you're just going to pick up an extra sound that's going to be a little aggravating to the neighbors, which I don't know that they realize will happen. And if I was going to put a stop sign, I would put it down on France and have one stop sign right in the middle, like you mentioned on 5th Street East, because that really does slow people down, because that was a big issue a while back. I think, Chief, I don't know when that stop sign popped in there, but my brother-in-law lived on the corner of Chase and 5th Street East, and there was always issues of people just gunning it. We have the same issue on 8th Street, which is in the county, but 8th Street is a 60 to 70 mile an hour road from time to time. I drive 40 on it, I drive people crazy. But I don't think that particular spot, and I hate to see trees removed for a stop sign, so we're going to take out 6 trees. It doesn't, we've all talked as elected officials about saving trees and being greener. We want to be more environmentally friendly, and now we're gonna make people stop and hit the gas to go through, down 2nd Street, which I don't think we don't have an issue of it being fast, but now we're going to take out 6 or 7 trees, and what are we really going to accomplish? And the fact that there haven't been any accidents, and I've seen issues where people nearly get into accidents, but I think, and I was on the planning commission when we talked about the hedge on the other side, but they had issues with people, with lights going into their house, and then with people looking into their house and that sort of thing. So that's why that hedge, I think, was changed. But I think it's, until that house sells on a corner and somebody remodels it, we're not going to get any sidewalks. And I'd be more for moving the power pole, and I think that would create a better sight line. So I'm just not in favor of putting a stop sign there. I would consider putting it down further, but I'd rather see pop-outs. But I'd also like to maybe agendize in the future. I know we have a traffic safety committee that meets from time to time, but I think there's some other places that I'd like to dig into that we can manage the traffic all over town a little bit better. So,
Councilmember Agamonte.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's been an issue that has been brought to my attention probably, and in fact, I walk Councilmember Harrington's East Napa, and that was the first thing that you said to me, get something, this is a speedway. And I agreed with her and passed it on to the then city manager, and of course she said that she would pass it on to the chief of police for a discussion. Here's what I've seen. First of all, everyone needs to understand, there's Broadway and 5th Street East. Those are the fast, bigger streets. 2nd Street East I see as an alternative to being on those faster, bigger streets. I have seen a few signs that say, pretend like your children live here. I've been told, and unfortunately, because the people there on 2nd Street East never thought they had to document any of these things, where their door handles were knocked off, their mirrors have been knocked off of their cars. I really support a stop sign here. I think Patton is probably the worst of all of them, and it's unfortunate, I think, the discussion of the trees. If that isn't possible, then I would possibly be in favor of another intersection, but I really believe, having spoken to so many people along here, I don't know how a hump would fit in. I think it's even more dangerous because it's a bike route. I think we've heard those comments. Something has to be done on that street. I never go on 2nd Street East. And I think it's very important that people understand that, because I am worried about it myself. So I will support this, and I just don't know what intersection. I really feel more prone to Patton. Thanks.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
I just want to add one thing, is that, as we all know, when we go around town, And I have lots of friends that are cyclists, but rarely do they stop at the stop signs on. Yeah. So, and what I'm concerned about is, so we have these stop signs, and people say, all right, well, I'm just going through now because that bicycle's going to stop, and it's an identified bike route with 10 or 15 signs that we've put up on the street and painted, and so on. I just see it as just another potential point of conflict. So, I'll leave it at that.
I do not support adding a stop sign. I think stop signs are something that have a lot of science behind them, and from engineering and police, it just doesn't seem the data supports having a stop sign, particularly combined with cutting down trees. It seems like the problem, it sounds like it would have been nice to have the meeting or the minutes from the other committee meetings in here to see them, but it sounds like there's just, an increasing flow of traffic, and I would support a speed hump somewhere along there. But similar to what Vice Mayor Edwards said, I think we have a traffic flow problem that's slowly growing, and that's why it's getting pushed out into our neighborhoods. So I think that there's a bigger conversation we can have, and there are some intersections with serious issues like 5th Street East that I feel like are a higher priority because they are more dangerous. But so that's how I came out. Does anybody want to try a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion that there should be a 4-way stop intersection on Patton and 2nd Street East.
I'll second it.
Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards?
No.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Agramonte?
Aye.
Mayor Henley?
No.
Thank you.
All right. Item, everybody good? Item 6.3, discussion, consideration, and possible action on the process used to make.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify one piece. I think this is intuitively known based on what we talked about, but by choosing Patton Street, it is putting the stop sign in, and it is the trees, removal of the trees in order to make the proper sight lines. Yes, just that was intuitive. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Item 6.3, discussion, consideration, and possible action on the process used to make appointments and reappointments to city commissions and committees and other related commission business. I will turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Hunley and council. So at April 17th meeting, the council discussed whether to revise the process for how you appoint commission members. And there was also some other conversation about commissions that council talked about at that point. So your staff report lays out 3 options for you to consider, and I'll just briefly walk through these. And then council can have a conversation. The first is to retain the current mayoral appointment, and that is the situation, that's the history of the selection that Sonoma's had for quite some time. If you were going to retain that option, staff does recommend that you look at clarifying on all of these. We clarify terms of office and have terms of office that are all at one kind of March or February 1 of every year. And that we also create some clarity about when the mayor makes an appointment, who's informed, are all applications shown to the full council. There's just some kind of clarity on internal process and procedures that if you decide to move that. In terms of the full council, this is a model where basically they're individuals that want to apply, put their application in, and in this world, the full council would vote on each individual appointment and generally reappointments. So basically the council, you can choose if you want to interview, and if you want to interview, that those are generally scheduled in a different location, not televised, so the individual coming forward feels comfortable, and though they are public meetings. And the full council interviews, there's a background information packet that the person fills out, and then you would come to a public meeting like this, and whether it's a 5-member council, 5-member commission, 7-member commission, 9-member commission, the full council is voting on each of those positions. The way I've seen agencies do that in the past is typically each of you would have a slate of here's who applied. If there's 5 openings, then you would each be putting your vote in. The city clerk would tally those, and then typically at the end of the meeting, those votes are shown and that slate is shown up on the screen. And generally, sometimes there's agreement about maybe the top 1, 2, and then there are revotes that have to occur maybe within to get to the final vetting of maybe the next 3 and 4. So that is a process. That's really the full council voting on all appointments and all reappointments. The last option is option 3, where in this situation, if you have, for example, a 7-member planning commission, there are typically 5 of the members that you each appoint individually. So you each make your own appointment about a commission member. The remaining 2 are voted on by the council at large. And again, you can decide if through those individuals, if you want to have people apply, if you want to interview, or if council members on those individual appointments you just want to select. Cities do it in different ways, but there would need to be some kind of a process for those 2 members at large. Again, on all of these, we do recommend that we look at aligning the terms. And just some basic pros and cons on the next sheet. Obviously, kind of sticking with the current mayoral appointment is the easiest in terms of a transition. There would be some clarification and process pieces, but the overall kind of structure remains the same. And so that is kind of the pro. The con is obviously it's not, the full council is not having an input on, you have a vote on the ratification, but you don't have an input on the nomination. And with the reappointment process currently, if a mayor does not reappoint someone, the full council cannot consider that individual. That's a process you could change if you wanted to stay with a mayoral appointment. The second option is, again, with the full council. Obviously, the full council is making those appointments. There is the one big difference between the full council and the individual option is really the transition. And this is where I think we need to make sure that, I want to make sure council understands. If you end up having the full council, then as you have individual vacancies come forward, then you interview and you go through that process and you make that selection. And so you're able to kind of keep your current knowledge base on your commissions. The third process, and this is just one of the things about having you each make your individual appointments under option 3. And that option really, there's 2 ways to do it. One, you kind of at some point you wipe the slate clean and you say, okay, anyone who wants to be on, whether it's Planning Commission or CSCC, has to reapply. And then, bless you, each of you are making your individual 5. You each get your own kind of pick, your own appointment, and no one gets any comment on that from your fellow colleagues. And then the remaining positions, whether it's 2 or 4, the full council would vote on. But so what in that situation, there is the potential that where you maybe have had institutional knowledge on a commission, you might potentially lose that in constitutional knowledge. So it's kind of it potentially is a bit of a do-over. The other way to do it is to say right now, if you wanted to implement this today, let's say you have 2 vacancies on a commission, we would pull straws out of a hat and you get a lottery, and let's say number 1 is Gary and he gets the next vacancy and he gets to appoint. And the next vacancy may come 6 months later and Madeline gets the second. And Rachel's pulled the 3rd straw, and 9 months from now, the next slot comes and she gets to appoint. It could mean that if you are the person with the 5th straw on that, it might be 2 years before you're able to make your appointment. And maybe that doesn't occur within your term. So there are some of the transition pieces are a little awkward under the individual. And so it really feels like if you're going to do the individual option, you probably are kind of you're starting over. Now, some of the folks you might choose to reappoint that are already on those commissions, so it doesn't mean automatically that it's a full brand new commission, but there is that potential and possibility. So there was a lot of information in the staff report. I think you all understand the situation and options in front of you. So staff is here happy to answer any questions. Either we will ask Rebecca to come sit up here because some of the nuances of our commissions, she has more precise knowledge. And obviously David's here with his knowledge of the Planning Commission, and Jeff works with a number of cities and has seen different models. So with this, we're happy to help you in your conversation.
Great. Council member questions? I have one. So in putting together these list of pros and cons, what resources were consulted?
This was really a staff brainstorm and conversations from things that we had a couple of meetings where we kind of drew from some of our own experience and put those down.
So was there any survey done of Sonoma County and what other cities have done?
There was
and
some
their
we
comments on them?
did survey other cities, and I'll let Rebecca talk about some of the findings that she got from some of her surveying.
The survey actually wasn't necessarily a Sonoma County, but a statewide survey through the city clerk's listserv, and asked the questions, what other cities were doing, and they were across the board of the 3 examples, and predominantly the most used appointment process was the full council process with interviews.
Can I ask how many people responded to your question?
It was, I want to say, sorry, I should have brought it with me. I have it.
Was it like less than 10?
No, it was like 20 or 30.
Oh, okay. 30 cities responded, and of those, how many used each method? Do you know?
I'm sorry, Amy, I can get it for you. I can pull it up possibly, but I wasn't.
Yeah, this wasn't a scientific survey, really. We're trying to get an understanding of just what are some of the methodologies. I mean, we knew the 3 main ones. Typically, we've laid out for you. You know, was there anything else where there's some nuances? So we were just trying to get a sense of what some other folks had.
Well, the reason I ask is because I know cities in Sonoma County have been transitioning their appointment processes, and they've gone through how they transitioned, whether they transitioned at all, whether they wiped the slate clean. And, you know, I think that there's close to home examples of this happening. For example, Healdsburg has the same system we have, and they are having problems, and they're changing. Santa Rosa used to have problems. They changed. And I think that all that data is important because these are cities that are similar to Sonoma, and they have experiences outside of the personal experiences of the staff. But any other questions? Councilmember Cook.
Can they keep that on?
All right. At this point, I will take it out to the public for public comment.
Chris Petlock. So you got to make it easy. I mean, right now people are actually interested, but there have been times when nobody wants to show up for any of this stuff. And actually just Lori Gallion was actually appointed to the city council. And at that time, the commissions were practically empty. If you have to march through any kind of hassle to be involved with this, nobody's going to do it. Nobody's going to show up. And, you know, right now, sure, you might have some people interested in the planning commission. Fine. You know, nobody ever comes to our meetings, ever, ever. You got to make it easy so people can participate in this. Anything else, people just aren't going to show up. They're not going to want to be involved. If people have to go through the gauntlet, if the people think their names are going to be splashed through the paper, they're not going to be involved. I've had so many people say to me, I don't know how you can do that. I don't want to be involved. I don't want my name in the paper. I don't want to be questioned. But they do want to put their 2 cents in. So I don't know. It's not an easy thing to do, but you have to make it easy.
Thank you.
Bob Felder, 5th Street East. I know I've been here expressing concern about this situation, so I want to thank staff for responding very quickly to put some options in front of you, and I sure hope that you're able to go through that and consider it quickly and move on with the process. Personally, I would favor either option 1 or 2. That could be your choice, but I mean, there are some points with exposing people to full council that may make it a little difficult. Option 3, I think, presents the most problems for implementation and loses some of the independence that you might have on a given commission, where you kind of are in bed with one council member. I think that's not really what I would have perceived to see the independence of a commission acting for the city. But in any case, regardless of which of these options, and I think the staff has done a wonderful job of putting out most of the choices, or at least the major choices. So don't delay this thing any longer than you have to. You ought to be able to come to some agreement amongst the 5 of you to move forward so we can get these commissions filled and we can take care of the business of the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Brown. Way back in the old days, I came before the entire council to be interviewed for the Cultural and Fine Arts Commission. My most current was the interview by the mayor and a council member. And from the applicant's perspective, the mayor and the council member scenario was a lot simpler and a lot easier to get through. And I would agree with Mr. Petlock. We have empty spots on our commission. We need them filled. And a lot of people just do not want to be subject to a cross-examination, a public process, and will not step forward, become commissioners, and we need them.
Thank you.
And I need to go home. And while I have the microphone, yes on measure A. A, ooh.
If I could, just for one more second, I just
I can't let you talk again. I'm sorry. I can't. If I do it to you, I have to let everyone else talk twice. I'm sorry.
Is there anything really against talking twice, getting in line and talking twice? Where is that in our city charter?
Did you talk on this item, right? You talked on this item, right?
So it's the mayor's prerogative.
Well, because you spoke on this item just a few minutes ago, right? Just to keep it straight. I can't because then someone else is going to come up and want to come back again. I'm sorry, I can't.
Thank you very much.
But if there's further public comment on this item.
Heidi Darling, 17619 Balsam Avenue. And my grandparents grew up here. My great-grandparents built houses here, so just want to add that. From a developer's perspective, we fully support a council-wide approach. It just allows, I would say it allows a deepening of the knowledge base that we think makes it easier to develop to and could potentially reduce some of the churn that we're seeing. So if we can develop that knowledge base, it's important for the nomination and the renomination. And I also want to just echo the gratitude that we feel and that I've heard in the room for addressing this quickly and putting some deep thought into it and bringing it forth in a really considered way. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment on this item?
Kelso Barnett, 328 First Street East. I would like to thank the mayor and the council for bringing this up. I think this is an important topic, and I think it's long overdue. I think we all remember that this sort of comes up every year as an issue, and so it'd be nice to finally fix this, and to former Commissioner Felder's point and others who have already spoken, get going on this. I'd also like to thank Kathy for all her work on this. I think this is very informative. My personal opinion, I would support either option number 1, keep it the way it is, but with changes, because obviously some things haven't been working, or option number 3. I think the full council, I mean, as someone who has applied to be on a commission and gone through the process and gone through sort of 3 rounds of interviews for 3 different appointments and reappointments, I would just echo Mr. Petlock and Mr. Brown and everyone else that has spoken thus far that I think you're going to run into a lot of unintended consequences and problems with option number 2. You have to remember we have 7, how many commissions do we have? We have a lot of commissions. And so ultimately, you know, if each commission has anywhere from 5 to 9 members, that means potentially every year, you know, you're doing quite a few interviews. And So that's going to be a lot more staff time. It's going to be a lot more time for you. I think that's also, to other people's points, going to discourage people from the process. I mean, the process that Kathy was describing about like a ranked system up on the screen, and if these interviews, I don't know if they were going to be in public. We have this great new civic portal now that will provide video that everyone can immediately go to. There are going to be some people in town that probably just don't want to subject themselves to that sort of public scrutiny. Now you'll say, well, they're ultimately going to be on a commission. Shouldn't they have to? Well, that's up to you. But I do think that there are going to be a lot of unintended consequences for number 2. I think option number 3, from what I understand, is I don't want to say it's common, but it's practiced in other cities, and I think ultimately that would provide the, in a weird way, the most democratic sort of result for the people of Sonoma. Not only are they electing, because the problem with option 1 was we never elected the mayor. You guys decided who the mayor was, and that sort of rotated every year. The people in town, we elect city council members, and if they have strong views when it comes to the planning process, which obviously is heated right now, they can elect a city council member who will hopefully in turn appoint a planning commissioner that is in line with what they've been saying during the campaign. So ultimately, I would say either option 1 with some tweaks or option 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheila O'Neill, 126 Blue Wing. I would like to say that I'm really thrilled that you're investigating these options now before you make another appointment. One of the things I would like to also commend everybody on is trying to step up and give our existing planning commissioners more support. The developers are going after them in a very fierce way. It's an ugly way, and I think it's very important that whoever is put on that planning commission, that we stand behind them and we give them that support that they deserve from council, from staff, from city council. We have to give those people who are willing to volunteer their time and put their name in the newspaper and show up here for the planning commission meetings. We have to give them the strength of the support of our community behind them. Thank you.
Thank you.
JJ Abadili, Ingram Drive. So, obviously, they'll have pluses and minuses, but I think that one thing that we need to be talking about is the terms of the commissions if we're going to be changing the process. Because I think one of the problems now with the two, at least the Planning Commission of which I'm most familiar, the 2-4 and then 4, 2-4-4, 2-4-2 process with the renominations is you have a problem is that the 2 years are so short. And so if you have a situation where you are putting someone up there who can, let's say you're sticking with the mayoral appointment or reappointment, then after 2 years or even after, and even with the full council, they're forced to come up again or and potentially not be renominated. And that's the problem. And to talk about, the treating our commissioners well, that's a risk I think that we face when commissioners become appointed by mayor, say, or even by the full council, and then 2 years later, they're subjected to the possibility that they're not renominated without the public and transparent process of the evaluation of their role. And that's, I think, something we've encountered recently, and I think that's part of the issue that we need to try to address. And the fact is when we have a nomination, even with a mayoral-led process, they still have to come face the scrutiny of the public and the council in the appointment process, which we also saw recently, which I agree is a problem because it's in many cases not fair to that particular appointee when the rest of the process has not been transparent and publicly conducted. So in summary, I guess I probably would think number 2 is the best option as well, with some attention paid to the terms of the appointing or of the serving of the commissioners. And maybe it's just something that becomes more simple, like just 4-year terms, 2 4-year, 1 4-year term. And then if you get, if they're renominated and you can put your name in the hat again or choose not to. I also think having a standing applicant pool is something that would be well served as well, because a lot of times what happens is nobody knows when there's an opening, and maybe the solidifying of or the standardizing of the dates in which appointments and nominations happen would solve that. But I think a lot of times is nobody knows when it's happening, despite it being put in the newspaper or whatnot, and having a standing applicant pool from which the council or a subcommittee of the council can nominate applicants, I think would be helpful. Number 3, I think, is a real potential mess, especially because I think it doesn't, there's a lack of community spirit that our commissions are all about, and I think number 3 would violate that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the council for discussion and action. Councilmember Cook.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. I've thought about this a lot. I've been on the council for 5 years. It has been an issue before, so this is nothing new. And I'm glad that we're bringing it tonight. And I know that even Mayor Hunley wanted to bring it to the council. The biggest thing that I would like to see is diversity on the commissions. Option 1, 2, and 3, I think that you can achieve that with all of them. The only problem that I had with option 1 was on the reappointment process, because it was never able to come to the council. So if Mayor Cook appointed somebody, they do their 2-year terms, the new mayor doesn't even want to reappoint, where we don't even look at that person, I thought was a disadvantage, because that would be more of diversity. And I do want to state that this isn't a beat up on Mayor Hunley or Mayor Cook tonight, or Mayor Gallion or whoever's been mayor. It's hard being the mayor. And I mean, I sympathize with Mayor Hunley, because I had the same thing when I was mayor. And not saying it's right or wrong, it's one of those processes that when I was mayor, there was, I believe, I reappointed or appointed almost everybody on the council, on the planning commission. It was just weird how that happened. And I was uncomfortable with it. And a lot of people close to me knew. So there's been some talk by the public, like it's hypocritical for me to bring this up. I don't want to have the mayor go through this, because what it happened in my year, and now it's happened in Mayor Hunley's year, is we have other things. We have the groundwater, the GSA. We have different things with, coming up for appeals on the Planning Commission. We have all this, but this becomes the hot topic. And I don't want that. It's almost revisiting the leaf blower issue. It's like having a leaf blower thing. So I'm hoping that tonight we can come up with one. And just so my colleagues know how I feel, I would accept option 1 with the change that at least the reappointment would be heard by the council. So 3 members would have to ratify the non-reappointment, because I think that way we will not lose any of our diversity or experience on the Planning Commission. That would mean that every time we have, if it was the other way, every time that we have a new mayor in town, we could end up having new commissioners. Option 2, I hear what a lot of people say about bringing it, airing your dirty laundry. I'm sure that when I'm done with the council, I'll be applying for a commission. I don't know if I really want to do a job interview in front of 10,600 people, so I understand that. And like some of the public did say, that it is true that we want people. I want people to be on the commissions, and I want them to feel safe. I don't want them to feel that just because they vote a certain way, that they might get removed the next year. That's how you get diversity. I still say I reappointed some people when I was mayor that I felt was doing a good job. They might not have felt the same way as I felt, but I was the mayor, not the dictator of Sonoma. So that's where you have that diversity. Option 3, surprising enough, I sat for an hour and I thought about it. I would actually be willing to even go that route. I think it might be a little too political, so that would be probably the last ditch effort. But I think that we really need to look at option 1, where just that reappointment, where at least it just comes to the council. And And then I'd like to hear what my colleagues have to say about the rest.
Councilmember Harrington.
Okay. I mean, I just want to preface my comments about this. The planning, all the commissions are very important, but the planning commission is our most powerful body after the city council. It is incredibly important to have all of the appointments filled with people that are thoughtful and dedicated, which we've had. You know, we've been blessed to have great commissioners heretofore, and I expect to have them forward going under whatever option we take. With regard to council members Cook's comments about option 1 in terms of modifying it to bring forward non-reappointments, I hadn't thought about that prior to today, but I think that's all right suggestion. I'm not against that per se. I think that in terms of option 1, we need to have standardized questions that are that come from the full city council for the interview and not just from staff. I think we need to put more time into that. I think we do need to make it clear that after people's terms expire, they cannot sit at another meeting. That's critical. As soon as your term is up, you may not vote. I think we need to establish that as well. I think that in terms of an interview process, it is preferable for people to not come to the city council in front of a whole audience to face an interview for a free job where they have to disclose all their economic interests and spend tons of time. So for that reason, I think option 2, having served on the Community Services and Environment Commission, there are people that want to participate in government that are not extroverts. They are introverts. They are thoughtful, quiet people, and they do not want to be exposed to, they do not want to make themselves the center of attention, and they have valuable contributions to make. And asking them to get beyond their own, the way that they are and forcing them out in public in a setting so that they can be accepted or rejected, I think is too much, and we're going to lose quality people that are shy or just more reserved. So possibly in favor of people that are louder. The ones that are more outspoken will come forward, and the quiet people will stay back because they don't want to be part of that. So I think that would be a real loss. I just want to also comment about the document in front of us. It says under option number 2, pros may reduce the perception of commissioner selection process being politicized. I actually really don't care for that being in here, and I don't care for option 3 saying that that's a negative. I don't even know what the term politicize means. That's like an empty term to me. So we are elected officials who are here because people want us to carry out the things that we talk to them about, the issues that they care about when we go door to door and talk to them. That is our job. It is political. That we are political. This is a political body. That's what we do. We pick people who carry out the best of our abilities, what we think will be best for our town. That is political. Politicization, it's not negative. This is inherently political. We are in a political body. That's what we do. And so perhaps we need to educate and talk about and define what that term means. But to me, it's meaningless. So picking people that you think will do a good job and you're elected official, that's what politicization means to me. And I think that's fine. That's what we're supposed to do. I'm supposed to pick the people that I think are going to do a good job, and that's what I'm committed to doing. I think option number 3 is the best option. I think that each council member who is elected by members of this community should have the right to pick one person, especially for the Planning Commission, to serve. I think that the interview process, having been part of it, and I think this is true about job interviews in general, that you actually don't learn that much from a person during an interview. So with regard to like the substance of talking to somebody for 15 minutes and being able to determine whether they're going to be a great planning commissioner or not, that's actually not effective. That's not a super effective means of choosing the best candidate, is to read a one-page application and interview them for 15 minutes. It's not a deep process, and that's not how real information about the qualities and qualifications of a person is going to come forward. So I think that we should have responsibility for appointing high quality, thoughtful people, people that show up to most of the meetings, people that have read the packets in advance, all of those qualities that we expect in a planning commissioner. I think that we should each pick our own, and I think that we should start with a clean slate, and to the extent that people want to reappoint the people that are on there currently, then we should. But if this body does not support the people that are on there currently and doesn't put them forward for reappointment, then we obviously have the wrong people. So we can assume that if we have good people, they're going to get back on there, and if we don't have people we want on there, then why do we have them on there? So I'm strongly in favor of option 3. I think it's hands down the best option. But I would compromise on option 1 with Councilmember Cook's amendment to it.
Who's next?
Well, first of all, I'd like to start my comments with, I like my name in the paper, whether it's good or bad. Jason, now that everyone knows how to spell it, I'm fine. You can say whatever you want. I'm very comfortable. It's kind of interesting. I come from a place where we worked with option 3, and it worked very well. There was no, I actually don't think there were term limits, but I actually think it worked well. And nobody goes to bed with anyone, to my knowledge, when you have your own personal appointment. That's one thing I know. Here's what I do know about this city council and this appointment process. I watched a slaughter with Joanne Sanders because of her choice. I remember David, I remember Lori's choices, and I think it's unconscionable for you all to watch that for whatever reasons. And you know, I don't feel that I have a preference other than saying option 3. I've worked with and I'm more comfortable with. And option 2, I know that there are some times when I'm in something and I stand where before I make a speech and I go, why do I put myself here? But sometimes if you really want something, if you want that opportunity, you have to step up. And you have to do that, even if it's uncomfortable. And I would hope under option 2 that this would be a more comfortable process, not here at the dais. Maybe in that another room where it's far more comfortable. You don't have to stand at a podium. You're at a table. All of those things would be at your disposal. I have to be honest, if we really believe these commissions are so important, and Kathy has heard this, I'm not directing this to her, we haven't trained any of them in ethics, or especially the Planning Commission. I don't know how long it's been. Gary, I don't mean to bring you into this discussion. We don't even train the planning commissioners to go to the state, Sonoma State, to actually learn what planning commissions do. So that's, to me, is disrespectful for the position. So option 3, I've worked with. The full thing, I don't, that seems fine to me. As I said, I've seen council members, mayors slaughtered up here for decisions, and what happened to our latest mayor, Mayor Hundley, was pretty disgusting. And so here is, I would go with 1 if the appointment and reappointment was up to the whole council, that we could get a suggestion or advice from whoever interviews, including the mayor, and I would go with that, with an appointment and reappointment made by, voted on by the whole council. And option 3 would be also something I'm thinking about.
I believe Councilmember Cook has a question.
Can I ask a question? Because one thing about option 3 I was going to bring up that would probably help me support it if, does the Planning Commission have to be, does our bylaws say it has to be 7 individuals?
Really? Does it?
Yes, in the Muni Code, it's 7. So you would have to change the ordinance.
But we would be able to change that ordinance?
Yes, you can change that ordinance.
because not to break into Edwards' time, but one of my thoughts, the only reason I was probably not in favor for it as much as I was option one with the reappointment change was those other two, I just didn't want to have, then how do you figure that out? But I would really be willing that if we changed our ordinances where all the committees or all the commissions were 5 people, 5 individuals, I do believe that would probably make meetings go faster. Everything gets appealed back to the city council anyway if on any decisions. So I would be willing for that where every member, and then I would like to just hear how you would feel about terms.
Well, first I want to answer the ethics training, which I know we went through as planning commissioners when I was first appointed, also on the SVCAC in the Sonoma State. The city has encouraged, I think I've gone 3 or 4 times, and I learned something new every time I've gone to that, and I recommend that for council members as well. But going to the number of people on a commission, especially the planning commission, I believe it should be 7. Because there's so many different ideas and experiences that people have. I mean, I'm a cheese salesman, but I sat on the commission with architects, with developers, with planners, with people who do other things, have a dog store down on Broadway. You know, I mean, I like having that diverse input from people. And I mean, I'll go with whatever the group wants to do, and I don't. I do think the reappointments we have to be careful because you need that history and that background. I mean, I had great mentors, and David knows most of them, that helped me learn. And my first few years on the SVCAC, I was chair there twice. I didn't really say much for the first couple years. I mean, I listened and I learned, and I had my opinions on certain things, but I think it's really important that with the training, I think we just need to improve that as well. In a way, I kind of like the idea of number 2. I don't think we've really gone out and actively pursued commissioners. I mean, we put an ad in the paper once in a while, and I haven't really tried to go get commissioners. I talk to a lot of people, but we all have these council meetings, and we get back into our regular busy life. And, I think we should make a real effort. But one thing I have to say, not to embarrass anybody, but when you go to City Hall, there's a list of planning commissioners, and our old planning commissioners are still on that list. I think we need to update that list. It's in the glass window. Because if a developer comes up and says, I need to go find these people, and they get confused on I think our new website's going to be great. But I mean, I obviously I've had my issues around planning commission. I'm not an expert on planning commissions, but I have a good sense of the community, I believe, on all sides. I mean, I've kept a hotel off the hillside, and I've approved different projects around town that I had a commissioner one time tell me, you don't even understand this, and I could go through every single project that on SVCAC, I can give you the details of it because we approve them, and then a couple years later they finally get built, and sometimes they work out, and they look just like that group of 7 people. I think there were more people on the SVCAC because we had ex officios and all kinds of other people that helped. So I think you need that experience. And as I stated a while back, I still don't think our planning commission is very diverse. I mean, it's something I feel very strongly about. But I think it needs to be 7 people. And I can go a couple of different ways on this, but I'd like to see the continuity. And we also need to have a mechanism of removing a planning commissioner if they're not doing a good job. I mean, I think the last planning commissioner that was removed was Robert Behrens many, many years ago. And, I think that we have to look at all the commissions. We have to look at what people do in their regular life. If they have a public voice somewhere else and they're making comments about policies and things like that, that maybe we should look at that ethic of having a voice out in the public and then not we're all supposed to be neutral up here when we step up here when an applicant comes up. And I believe that really we need to drive that down into the commissions. But I also say, I don't know all the commissioners. I mean, I lead a busy life with kids, and, I think we need to have a little more interaction with the commissioners, with the council, and get to know each other a little bit better. But I would like to go out on, and I think we should go out and recruit right now. So, this option number 3 that has some benefits, but I'm going to continue to listen, and I'll be open-minded.
Can I just make one last comment?
Sure.
For all of us who have such respect for these commissioners, we don't even thank them. We don't take them we don't have a lunch. I've spoken to Kathy about that. This has nothing to do with Kathy being city manager. We don't thank them. We don't have a luncheon for them. We don't have a breakfast. So I think it's healthy that we're having this discussion, because you know what? These people are very valuable to us. They give their personal time. They could be sitting at home watching Law and Order, and they choose not to be. They want to serve their community. So Kathy, we've discussed this before. I feel that you're really in agreement with the comments I've made, but I just wanted to make that my last.
I guess it's my turn. Option number 3, I first learned about 2.5 years ago, right after I was elected, because I met some other city council members from other cities in the county that have this. And I thought it was really strange at first, but the more I've been thinking about it and talking to people about how it works, I believe that option number 3 is the most democratic. And I also believe that it will lead to the most diverse commission, because the commissions then will reflect the composition of the council in many ways, because we have different preferences, priorities. We look at the world differently, ages, genders, especially. And so I think that, and I was wondering about to me, it just seemed like every time you had a couple new people on your council, your whole commission started turning over. But in practice, I mean, whoever I pick for the planning commission, I want them to be a really great planning commissioner, because if they're terrible, it makes me look terrible. So people, even if someone leaves office and they had a great planning commissioner, the next person that came in sometimes would keep them, because they knew that they were a very well-respected, knowledgeable planning commissioner. So I think that that it would lead to this interesting, combination of new people, but also holding on to people who've been on for a long time that have proven themselves to be very good commissioners. So my first choice would be option number 3. My second choice would be option number 1, of course. And I was thinking about what Councilmember Cook said and trying to think how that would work without putting a planning commissioner up in front of everybody just to get rejected. And it seems like a practicable solution would be, because what I did is and I decided even at the beginning when I became mayor that everyone that was on the planning commission, when they were up for reappointment, they were going to get re-interviewed. And my understanding is in other cities it is a common practice to always re-interview at the end of a sub-term. And I think that we should. I think that we should do it to make sure that people are still interested. There could be someone else that's better that didn't apply before. And so I think if everyone's in the same pool, whoever the best person is should be it. But if there is concern about the reappointments, it could be that there are 2 names that come forward. One would be the reappointee, one would be the nominee, and then the council can just pick between the 2, and then it wouldn't be, like they're having to stand in front of everybody to see if they're getting kicked off. But I would really prefer option number 3. And another thing that I understand from talking to people who have used this option is that it actually made things less, I guess, polarized. And my concern about number 2 is that I think it's the least democratic, because that means that these commissions will be formed by a majority of the council every time. So you're always getting this, whatever the majority view is. And I was talking to Supervisor Gorin, and she had interviewed for the Planning Commission in Santa Rosa multiple times, but she was not politically aligned with the majority of the council, but they changed to this system because they were fighting a lot. And as soon as they changed, she ended up getting on it, and then I mean, obviously, she's a competent person, and she did a good job then, and she's doing a good job now. So, other things, I believe that the application that we have for our commissions is very simple and could be updated to actually be a more useful tool, especially if we did go, well, any of them, but option 3 would be nice if you had a deeper account on paper of, you know, people's skills and things. And I support changing the term start dates to the same day, because the way that we have it now is insane, because it's just interviews constantly all the time. And then the other thought that I had, which I don't know if this is coming up today, but with this Cultural Fine Arts Commission, the thought of changing it to a committee that's not subject to the Brown Act or some sort of working group. Well, that was a related concept, because that commission, it's like a little bit differently, and I think it would be benefit if they could talk to each other outside of their official commission meetings, because it's more of an ongoing, like, working together type of thing. So that particular group, I think, would be nice if it was moved to a different structure that was not subject to the Brown Act.
So in the way, just Mayor Hunley, if for that, we can have a further conversation, but if the council appoints, and Jeff, you can clarify, but if the council's appointing individuals to any kind of committee, et cetera, and it's a standing committee, then it is subject to the Brown Act. So what you would really be looking at is how to create maybe some kind of more of a community arts coalition, and you would be asking that group to do some work for you, but then they wouldn't necessarily be subject to the Brown Act. They could work together on events, because there is some of what they do are events and activities, which is a little cumbersome when they can't be breaking the Brown Act. So the way to do that, honestly, would be, it would not be a city commission anymore. You would be creating a different kind of a structure.
Yes, and if I could ask a few questions in terms of option 3, because it appears there may be a majority of the council that support option 3. Number one, Councilmember Cook is right in terms of how many people on each of your committees do you want? Because if it's more than 5, then you need to address what you do with the additional folks. How do they get appointed? Do you create a hybrid system every time then? Likewise, if you have more than 5, this issue of aligning terms becomes problematic. Certainly the 5 that are appointed by the council, their term would coincide with the council members' terms of office. But if there are more than 5 on a committee or commission, what terms of office should they have? Should they correspond then to the maybe a January date? Let's assume, for example, that the council decides that the terms of office of your appointees would coincide with your office. Your successor is sworn in, assuming you don't get reelected. Your successor is sworn in the first meeting of December, typically, following a November election. That would then become the terms of office for all commissioners and all committee members, whether you have 5 or more than 5. If you also select the third option, how do you want to handle the transition? Do you want to wipe the slate clean and everybody's term ends on X date and they're filled by council appointees to begin the following day? Or is there some other hybrid approach you'd like to take? And again, this gets more problematic if you want to retain the number of commissioners and committee members that are currently serving on your current committee and commission members. One of the reasons that, and I've heard this articulated by David, he likes more than 5 only because it assists in making sure a quorum appears at the meeting. So it's sort of a practical issue that having more than 5 assists in making sure a quorum is present for the meetings. I don't know how significant that is, and I don't know if achieving a quorum has been a consistently problematic issue for the Planning Commission in particular. Maybe David could.
But isn't a quorum 3 if it's 5?
3 of the 5, true.
Right. So it's fewer people need to show up.
True.
Then you have 3 people making giant decisions in a town of almost 11,000.
Well, I want to hear what our planning director is going to say, and then I want to ask Madeline about your experience with it.
Well, I just want to say, excuse me, that lately we rarely have quorum problems because we also have the alternate position. But quorum problems can emerge when, or could emerge more frequently in the past when we didn't have the alternate position, and it's not so much an issue of absences, but of conflicts.
Well, since you've had this system, did you have an alternate with it? Was there one to make it?
No, we had 5.
So what happened if someone didn't show up and it was an even number?
To my knowledge, it never happened, unless somebody was ill or something. But to my knowledge, that was never an issue. As I remember, I'm sorry, I can't say that's the fact, but I don't think I've ever had that happen. I just wanted to ask a question of our city manager, if you don't mind. So I think our decision tonight is our option. So with that option, is there a way that we can just say, okay, discuss maybe possibly the 7 or the 5, or once we say here's the option, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying. If somebody would elaborate on that,
I think maybe what you're saying is there's a number of jurisdictions that do this. They've transitioned to this. The answers to Mr. Walter's questions can be answered by investigating what is done and what the practice is for when there are 5 or addition to 5. And if we said tonight we want to go with option 3, staff could come back to us and say, this is the practical implementation that is typically done, and we could approve that or not.
That's exactly what I said.
That's what I heard. What's your question? Yeah, I like the idea of that, because I do know that sometimes the transition is rather drastic. It's completely cleaning house and then potentially adding back some of them, but I like Councilmember Harrington's point. If there's people that don't get reappointed, then maybe it's good that, to mix it up a little bit. But,
I apologize again. And a couple of my commissioners, one was a planning commissioner, they stayed on beyond my term. I thought I'd add that as well, because they were considered to be very good.
yeah, so the questions, maybe by, are we ready to make a motion for number 3, or at least narrow it down?
I think
Is that
maybe,
what we're talking about?
It's from looking kind of and hearing the council, I think let's maybe start to hone in, and then we can go through some options and issues and see how strongly, council feels on things. And I think we're gonna have to come back, obviously with some of this. But it sounds like there was starting to be some conversation about looking at option 3. Can I get is that a yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So within option 3, then, I think one of the first question is numbers. So I do believe that, I think one of the points David made is a good one. If you just have 5, if you then have some conflicts and or someone's gone, you start to get pretty small numbers quickly, which is, I think, the reason. If you really typically, every city I've worked for, planning commission's always 7. And I think that's part of the reason. You want to have some diversity of views, and you want to have, if there's conflicts or people are traveling on business or sick, you've got that. So that's kind of a first question as we look at commissions. Do you want to look at, and this is not just planning commission, are there, in terms of numbers, does council want to stick with just 5? Are you willing to look at 7? And do you want to look at, you have one commission that has 9. So, and then there's a question of alternates. I've worked for 2 cities that have individual appointments. Again, and I've seen those work fine. It's been done that from the beginning of time. Versus the change that you guys will be embarking on if you move this direction. So I think the real question is also then a question of alternates. So I think maybe if you want to have a brief dialogue on 5, 7, or even 9 with CSCC, and then we also alternates. Alternates is not something typically that I've seen in communities I've worked for. So that's a little more of a unique piece that we have, and you have to decide if you think that works for you.
Councilmember Harrington.
Well, my thought was we would each, no matter what the number is, we would each have our own one pick, which would be the 5. And then if there were an alternate, and then also the person who's not from the town of Sonoma, but who's from the valley, that maybe the valley person and the alternate person would be somebody that we would decide together. And then we could figure out, in terms of who nominates that person or how they get brought forward, I thought we could do the mayor system for that, like the mayor brings somebody forward, or we would still have to figure out basically option 1 or 2 for that person that we're all voting on. But basically those two people wouldn't, one would be the alternate and one would be the Valley person, and they wouldn't it wouldn't be the majority of the votes. The majority of the votes would be the 5 individuals that we each picked. That's what I was thinking. So I was thinking 7 maybe, and then, I mean, these are just like a brainstorm, but I was thinking 7, and then 1 would be the Valley person and 1 would be the alternate. That's what I was thinking. And we would pick the Valley person and the alternate person together in some fashion.
This is making number 1 look pretty good right now to me. And I like the idea of, I'm swinging back towards number 1 with the comments, and having the alternate and/or reappointments in front of the entire council, because they're already used to it. They're already in the game, so to speak. They're in the public. They're on television every month, and it shouldn't be that big of an issue. I mean, my experience in town is that I haven't seen too many shy people on the planning commissions, and I like the idea of having alternates, because that's a person in training that can come up, and I think it's really valuable to number 1, to learn how to sit through meetings that can go much longer than council meetings go, and still want to serve. I think that's so I'm leaning back towards number 1.
So
for those
through the
reasons.
mayor, and that actually is a succession plan with respect to that.
Councilmember Cook.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd agree with Councilmember Edwards, and that's why it was hard for me, option 1 or option 3. I can see the benefit in both, so just so my colleagues know how I feel, I could go either way with option 1, as long as we had the reappointment within the council, or do option 3. But I would say that if we did option 3, when it comes to the ones that have 10, all you do is you just draw straws, and one council member only gets 1 and the others get 2 picks. With the planning commission, I agree with Harrington, if we do option 3, that we would that would be at large, and you would probably have 1, because we always go 2-4. I mean, or we always go, up here we go 4, so it's always 4-2. Well, every 2 years we have an election, so we would stagger. 1 planning commissioner would be for 1 election cycle, and the other one would be for the other election cycle, and that would be decided by the council. And I think that that would be that to me that would make sense. So either way.
So through the mayor, may I ask the city manager something? Are you bringing these ideas up for us to answer, or you're just preparing for us to come back and look at them?
No, well, I was hoping we could walk out tonight with you giving us direction first on what model, so what option. And then once we have the model, then we really talk, just conceptually, we talk through kind of terms, numbers, if there's transition wrinkles that need to be worked through. There are a few other questions. I mean, there's this alignment of terms that we want to try to do depending what model it goes. I think Councilmember Harrington brought up the issue of expired terms. There's really kind of 2 different options on that, and I think we should talk about that, because it would be good to have some additional clarity on that point. Because my goal would be we'd be bringing you back basically in a council appointment process, what it looks like with the pieces put together, and then we, depending on what is done, we would have to change muni code and potentially create a council policy manual.
I'm going to point to Councilmember Edwards over
One
here.
quick comment. So I don't like the idea of when a person's term is over that they have to leave. So and we use the analogy of an airline pilot. When he turns 65, does he forget how to fly the plane? Or do you want a 22-year-old to come in and fly the plane? It's just being a pilot, that's how I think. And I think having commissioners, there may not be qualified people that step up. So you want to be able to have a commissioner who, like Bob Felder, I mean, I would appoint him again right now. He would be my pick.
Well, we could
It's
have.
it's a different issue, Gary. The issue is that we've had, for example, Michael Coleman, his term is expired, he continues to vote. He is not appointed. He hasn't been reappointed. That's what, I'm not talking about whether you can do another
And
term.
why that's not getting done, I don't know, but it's.
But the
yeah,
question is,
yeah.
are you allowed to
No.
vote after your term is expired? That's the question.
Well, I personally, I don't have an issue with that because I think I'd probably serve for a couple of extra months on a commission or two. And, you know, it's just, it's continuity, is all.
So, Madam Mayor, may I offer again that we choose what our option is, because it seems as if we could be here a long time.
I
Much
agree.
to the disappointment of the city manager, because I'm sure she'd like a clean slate. I'm not prepared.
Can I make a motion, try and make a motion?
Oh,
I think
yes.
so. Okay. I would like to make a motion that we adopt option 3, where individual council members will each select a commissioner, and that the process for doing that, we would select all new commissioners. It would be a clean slate of commissioners, and that the city manager would come back to us with recommendations about staggering terms. We would vote at a later date about staggering terms, the numbers for each of the commissions, and I think that's it.
How about, and other related matters?
And other related matters.
Thank you.
And I'll second.
And I just wanted to, I know we're going to talk about this more, but I like the idea of having, 7-person commissions where we have 7 or greater, just 7, and then we could have at-large seats where the idea of having the terms with the election cycle is interesting. So, is there any further discussion before we vote? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Edwards?
No.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Agramonte?
Aye.
Mayor Hunley?
Aye.
Thank you.
4-1. Oh, God, I closed this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. It is now time for council member reports and comments. Do we have any reports or comments?
I just want to mention that there's a GSA meeting on Thursday at the Vintage House. Dan, it starts at 5:30? Yes. Any public that wants to come, it's going to be the first meeting in the GSA. It should be an informative meeting.
Where is it?
Vintage House.
I would just like to say that the council was at the Sonoma Valley High School graduation on Friday night, and it was inspirational and beautiful, and congratulations to all of the high school grads. It's an exciting time to be alive. City manager comments and announcements.
None tonight, thank you.
And we are adjourned.
Underwriting is provided by Sonoma Paint Center, located at 815 West Napa Street. For more information, you can go to sonomapaintcenter.com. And Larbury Automotive, located at 18155 Sonoma Highway. For more information, you can go to larburyauto.com.